I forgot to turn on my microphone. That's embarrassing. All right, well, I think I finally got this on. I just need to get a couple more things going, and then we can start watching. Hopefully I will see Trevor here soon. I just want to verify, make sure things are good. YouTube does not make it as easy to stream as like Twitch does. But you know what? That's all part of the game. That's what we're in here looking to do. Okay. Ooh, that's not appearing though. Yo, hey, Trevor. Good to see you, man. I'm just gonna restart something real quick. I gotta get the super chat thing working on the stream, so that's kind of annoying. Appreciate you being in here, man. I tried to put a reminder in the Discord for you. Oops, I should probably put this on also. Depending on how the stream goes, also we might look at that Jubilee reaction. Start this again. Control V, connect. Come on, work. Yo, MP, welcome in, bro. Appreciate you coming here, man. I got my teapot ready. Huh, it's not working. That sucks, man. Maybe if I try this one. Oh, I got to get another light turned on, too. Nah. I don't know. I can't get the freaking YouTube chat. Here it is. Oh, pff, there it goes. All right. All right, shoot. All right. All right, we're in business with that. Let me just get this other light on real quick. Oh, man. Put the display on for this. There we go. The more I stream, the better I'll get at being ready when it's time to be ready. Outlaw Shah spooky. Yeah, the lighting was a little frightening there, I'd say. Okay, so that's good. We got Trevor and MP in the house. Shout out to both of y'all. Appreciate you guys. Oh, shoot. Is my... Oh, great. Let me get my sound kit back. Oh, this ain't good. This is not good, gentlemen. I gotta have the sound effects. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know why. For streaming, I think the sound effects is good. Oh, that sucks. Whatever. And I don't know where my headphones are. It's like someone was in here playing a prank on me, bro. Something just ain't right. Here we go. Sorry, guys. All right, hold on one second. Huh. Something seems weird. Ah, it's plugged into the wrong thing. Wow. This answers so many questions. All right. Here's my 1/4-inch splitter. All right, perfect. And then I'll try one more thing to see if I can get my MIDI settings. Okay. Off, on. Perfect. All right. Shout out to you guys. Wow, I'm so happy I figured that out midway. I was about to give up. Today we're going to be watching that Incel thing. Let's see. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since I've seen what's up with the Incels. I'll tell you, just to give you a background on what I remember about Incels specifically. Like, I remember back in the day when Incels were new. You know what I'm saying? And I guess when I hear the word Incel, the first thing that my mind... VOB. Okay, perfect. I really appreciate that, Trevor. Like, that's really one of the things I'm always paranoid about is the audio sound. I watched part of it, but the truth is, bro, is I had it on at night because I am subscribed to What If Althist is his name, and I turned it on, and after like 5 minutes, I fell asleep. Like, it was one of those I need to fall asleep, so I need to put something on, and it got like 60% of the way through before I woke up and just turned off the TV and went back to sleep. So I never actually, like, I don't remember a single thing about it, to be honest. Which is good because I'd prefer to live react to this. Okay. And I'd say after this, depending on time, we can react to the Jubilee episode with Myron Gaines, where it's the fat versus the jacked people. And I feel like that might help. Or that might be interesting coming off of this incel video. I have watched some of Woodif Outhis videos. He's clearly a very intelligent guy. I am afraid it might be a little like doom and gloomer. But, you know, a lot of things are these days, so that's okay. But yeah, I figured I'd give what at least I can recollect or what I associate with incels, you know, because I remember when that incel term was new. You know, I think I had just finished high school, and I was in my early couple years at college. And I remember when Elliot Rodger did the thing down there at UC Santa Barbara. And one of my buddies actually was attending the school. I can't remember exactly what year it was. He was a year ahead of me, but I think he was still at Santa Barbara. So I remember when that happened. And, dude, I remember, because it was a big story, you know, just because I knew someone there, but I remember reading the manifesto of Elliot Rodger. So I think he became kind of like the king incel. I don't know if the term was coined by then yet or not, or if it kind of became a thing after that happened. But yeah, I was really, you know, I still am. I write my dreams down every night. But I was into dream interpretation pretty heavy. Like, that's when I got into studying about dreams. And I remember reading his manifesto because I wanted to know if he mentioned any kind of religious thing or dreams or anything of a spiritual nature, because I was trying to understand like why he would do this. And there was no talk about religion for that entire manifesto. And then finally at the end, he recalls a dream where I believe he had a dream that like his father passed away or something like that. Basically like his father wasn't in his life anymore. And that was him as a young boy having that dream. And for some reason, before he did what he did, and he was finishing up this manifesto, it was going to be like the next day, he recalled this dream. And I thought that was the only little blip of spirituality we got in this otherwise what appears to be atheist life. But I always kind of just thought that was interesting because it was like his father was not, I mean, his father was in his life, because from what I can remember, his father's still alive, I think. But I think maybe symbolically that dream represents a relationship with his father that maybe was not existent or just not good. And maybe that's what led him down that road. But anyways, past that, I think what we had was the incel subreddit. I remember that. It was not a subreddit that I visited. But I do remember hearing, the reason I know about it is because I remember hearing about it getting banned. Because like it used to be on Reddit, and then they banned the subreddit. And that was news for a little bit. And then they probably all went to 4chan. And honestly, 4chan for me, unless there's like a UFO leak, and I find my way over there, like I don't really like to spend time on 4chan, because I feel like it's just really negative. Also, on a side note, I might be having autofocus issues with this camera. So I'll have to look at that and figure that out, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, those are all my associations with the word incel. You know, the word's probably changed. I don't think we really hear about incel the way we used to hear about it, like back in those days, like I'm talking about. I think maybe now it's more just used as an insult. Like, even if you're getting laid, you know, you might still be called an incel here or there. Anybody who talks about men's rights or red pill stuff, it's not, you know, a surprise if someone lobs that at you. But so we'll go ahead and take a look at this, see what it's about. They also banned, they banned MGTOW? Oh, damn. See, I didn't know about that back then. That does sound vaguely familiar. I know that they quarantined the red pill subreddit, but somehow it's still there. Like, I think they always thought they were going to get banned, but then it somehow still exists. But you technically can't follow the subreddit because it's quarantined. So, yeah, that kind of sucks they got rid of MGTOW. I feel like they would have got rid of Red Pill before they got rid of MGTOW. But you know what probably happened when they banned the Incel subreddit? That traffic probably went straight over to MGTOW. And, you know, then that was the end for that. Anyways, let's go ahead and see.
And eggs them on.
You know, we'll hit the like button on this. We'll hit the like button. And we're going to go straight to the beginning. It's going to be 41 minutes, so this is going to be a little bit of time. I'm going to put this up. If it's too loud, please let me know. All right. So here goes. I do have a little stack with me. I'll try not to eat into the microphone. I don't think anybody likes that. I got some black tea. So I'll probably have to get up to take a leak a few times. All right, gentlemen. Let's just get to business here. So we're watching the coming incel revolution. Uh-oh. This doesn't bode well. The incels are coming. This is by What If Alt Hist.
This topic is one of the most taboo in all of society. Most people won't discuss it, or even think about it, since they don't want to deal with the immense social shaming that comes from it. As a person who studies history, you tend to see that we're incredibly ruthless.
Also, I'll probably have to pause this often enough where it might borderline on annoying, but it's like, you know, I got to comment on this for it to be fair use. So just a, you know, word of wording there.
To previous eras of history. That being said, every era of history thinks they're in the right, and they always do something wrong in a major way. Thus, it goes...
Video slightly too loud. Trevor, I appreciate you for being on top of this, man. Really. This helps me. I'm going to put it down about 33% or so. You just let me know.
Without saying that we're doing the same thing since every society does so. The human mind projects, and thus a society which hates its ancestors really hates itself. That being said, someone needs to discuss the elephant in the room. As my father said growing up to me, if no one in the room is doing the right thing, that makes it your duty. I sincerely believe that the issues in modern dating are so horrible that they will cause a revolution in the next few years. For people new to my channel, that may sound insane, but I believe it unironically.
In the next 2 years? Okay, well, wow, he's putting a pretty bold prediction there. Wow.
I've made several videos talking about why I believe
Hopefully that's better, Trevor, by the way.
America, and I would say the Western world in general, is on the verge of what I've called at different points a civil war, revolution, or right-wing backlash. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to tease out the different threads which can explain a unique historic event which we'll only fully understand once it's occurred, as I believe it will. The purpose of this video is to tease out what I've said before is the biggest crisis of our time, in my opinion, and the most important variable driving
I just put it down a tad bit more, so just in case.
This revolution, the young male dating crisis. Why are we waiting?
Oh shoot,
the world is a dangerous and hostile place, and all safe.
Okay.
Male oppression rationalizes whatever their emotional.
My bad, something happened.
From Part 1, the taboo topic. People are not rational. From studies, we've found that 90% of the population just rationalizes whatever their emotional state is. Thus, when you're seeing someone say something, in most cases, it's just a rationalization of what's inside them.
I could agree with that, man. I definitely agree with that. I don't know how you got back up there. But most of us are... I don't think you can be purely rational without being like a pure computer. Ah, it's on that. Damn, that sucks. All right.
Their self-interest to believe. This is obviously true for the left in general today, which is philosophically literally said that logical consistency is white male oppression, and whoever is in power gets to determine what's true. In general, a good way to determine if someone is actually making an argument or rationalizing is based on if they use supporting evidence in their claim. If they don't actually have an argument against you, they don't follow a causal chain of logic or have blatant inconsistencies in their argument. We've found through studies where John Haidt is the greatest expert on this topic, and I believe him to be one of the best thinkers of our time, has done a tremendous amount of research on human nature, and
This book, The Coddling of the American Mind, I heard is really good. Maybe someday I'll get around to reading that.
Everything I've said in the previous paragraph is from his work. He's also found that it's very hard to be rational about things which affect us personally. We tend to be decently good at analyzing the reality of problems of which we don't have a personal stake, But once you get closer, people can become intensely biased as their thoughts and words become excuses for their self-interest. As a tangent, one of the things which annoys me is that people appeal to authenticity, or this emotionally feels right, thus it's moral and good. As if emotion...
You know, oops. I remember something that my, one of the professors, like, I had her for a couple of classes, but in my last year in college, I had a class with her, and she was a religious studies professor. So for some of my general ed classes, I took religious studies classes because I thought they were interesting. But I remember her saying, like, kind of like my last quarter or so, it was almost like graduating time, but she gave us this speech, and she was just like, one of the things she said that I remembered is, and it was what her father told her, who she brought into the class once and was actually an ambassador for the U.S. He was pretty cool. But he had told her when she was graduating. Oh, crap. No, that's a misremembering. It was a professor that told her, and now she was telling us. Anyways, what he said was that we don't live in a world of facts. We live in a world of very clever arguments. And I thought that was really good, because even some things that you see as fact, it's really just that we accept those to be facts because that's the best argument that we have that makes the most sense. But it may or may not be true if we really knew. You know what I mean? And reason I remember this is because what they're talking about in the video right now is that there's a difference between like an honest conversation and someone just arguing to convince you of something, you know. And if you've read, you've read your Plato, they talk about this thing called sophistry. And in this book, it's like a conversation between, Socrates, Plato's Socrates, and some interlocutors who are basically like some Athenian young noblemen, basically. And one of them is a teacher named Thrasymachus, and he's there specifically hired to teach these young men how to argue well, because if you're living in a democracy, then being able to argue your points well is probably going to be pretty useful. But one of the things that's pointed out in this book is the difference between being a sophist, or someone who just argues for the sake of arguing to win the argument, or someone who's like a philosopher and, actually loves wisdom, and you guys are having a conversation or a discussion to get to the truth. And typically, if you're emotional or your ego is involved, you're going to be a sophist because you're just arguing to win. And that's what we're just surrounded by a lot of, is just people arguing for whatever political ends they're trying to achieve.
Emotions are an arbiter of underlying goodness or truth. That being said, your emotions are a mammal brain manifestation of your genetic self-interest. Your emotions are a lower resolution, more primal version of logic, which involves getting what you want. You'll find that people who are guided by their emotions are intensely selfish. Confusingly, often being selfless as a form of selfishness as a way for emotional stability or to look better socially. The reason I'm going through all of this is that this is the topic our society is capable of handling the least rationally. I'll see most people just break down into complete emotion about this subject. People very quickly lose their ability to be objective. I believe this is true, as mating is probably the most important thing in human life. Thus, we get very wrapped up in it. You will probably have a lot of emotions watching this video, and that's normal, but you need to take a deep breath, think about what I'm actually saying, not what it seems like I'm saying, and whether or not it's true. Whenever anyone brings up this topic, they get immediately called an incel. First of all, as you'll get to later, this is a terrible argument on any single level. If you said this in a debate in a sane society, you'd get laughed out of the room.
I guess it would be like an ad hominem attack. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty much what red pillars or guys like that in the manosphere face every day, right? It's just like if you say something, the other side's going to be like, you're just a bunch of angry incels. But then there are guys that are getting women, and they're even in relationships, and they'll still be called incel, right? Incel is supposed to be involuntary celibate. That's what it's supposed to mean, right? Just you're not able to get it in, so to speak. But I think it's kind of boiled over into just, you remember when they used the term neckbeard? I used to think that was funny. You know, but I think we've lost the term neckbeard, and it's gone straight into this.
A further irony is I get this a lot whenever I talk about this topic. You people know nothing about my personal life, and if you did, you would realize it's absolutely insane to say this about me. People use this photo of me from high school to mock me, but I also used to look like this when I was in better shape, and now I look like this. Well, I've been on keto for over a month to get into better shape now. There is a barrier between
I feel like I'm in this guy's position. I'm trying to trim down a little bit myself.
YouTubers and their audience for obvious reasons, which means you guys really know very little about me. I know me doing this here is incredibly petty, but the thing is, I'm responding to something even more petty, and I need to debunk this line of argument since otherwise it will clog up the entire discourse around this video. If you're a decent person watching this, I apologize. A lot of people think I'm some nerd dwelling in my...
So the guy, his IG is Rudyard W. Lynch, in case anybody wants to follow this. I'm reacting to his video, so I'm just trying to, you know, do him justice. Creator of What If Altist, Dropout, hiked Appalachian Trail. That's pretty crazy. You know, just hiking anything, I mean, especially if he was by himself. Amaury de Rhinecourt enjoyer, I don't know what that is. Struggling to goodness and wisdom. 22 years old, he's an intelligent young man.
Parents' basement. But this channel is actually a pretty complex business that I make decent money off, where this is my full-time job. I have a team which works for me, I live in my own house, I make over 6 figures a year, I drive
Damn, look at that Audi, clean.
Audi, and I'm 6'4" tall. I have a large social network, have founded 8 different social clubs.
I'm sorry, I'm not calling him a neckbeard, but the neckbeard sort of meme was very much the hat with like a samurai sword, but that's besides the point.
Including one for professional influencers at one point. I'm pretty satisfied with my romantic options right now, and I'm just not an incel. Again, I apologize for the egregious bragging, but if I don't do this, this video will just devolve into people calling me a loser without a real argument. The reason I care about this topic is that as a young man, I see this issue hurting my people in a horrible way. I care about my fellow young men, and as you'll see later in this video, the whole society. I know hundreds of young men, and almost to a man, they complain about this issue being completely unbearable. I'm generally satisfied with my life now, and I made the choice that now that my needs are met, I want to help my people and community with their issues. Furthermore, I don't think people realize how insane the line of argument is.
I think that is kind of a thing, you know. It's like if you're, especially if you're in your early 20s and it's tough for you, it's something that seems like it's everything, it's problems like it's center stage in your consciousness, but then when, you know, if you do get it figured out and you get a girlfriend or whatever, it does quiet down a lot until you kind of just forget about it. But you know, it's every now and then you'll just hear about it, but you know, there are so many guys struggling, so I kind of give them credit for thinking about them.
Is you care about a social issue which affects part of the population, thus you're a loser. It's the equivalent of how in the Middle Ages, if you said the peasants were starving, the society would tell you that you're poor and shameful for that. It also betrays a complete lack of empathy or an inability to have any curiosity about someone else's issue. In fact, this line of argument just proves the incels right that society doesn't care about them at all, and that they're an oppressed underclass. I don't think people realize how irrational our society and its thought processes are. I've made multiple videos on this, but the short answer is our society has lost the ability to use causal logic. We just say random stuff and rationalize it later. The thing is, if you discuss these issues and the automatic reply is, you're an incel, that means you just don't care at all about the truth. What this means is relational warfare, or GSR, being gossiping, shaming, or rallying. This is a form of social piracy, in which you use social shaming as a way to push your own self-interest. Our culture does this all the time, every day. What all this belies is that we live in a culture in which young men are seen as completely useless. Society doesn't care about your issues, and basically actively wants young men to die. Just read between the lines at street interviews of women and men.
Hey, welcome in, Will. Let me give you a shout out. Hey. I'm gonna put you on here. I have been called a Brad before. That's the bad boy Chad. You know, I've only ever heard Brad used like one time, and I didn't even know what it was. I think I was on Twitch or something, and someone used the word Brad, and I was like, I gotta look that up. And what I heard of Brad is someone that is halfway in between a Chad and, you know, like the other extreme of that. And Brad's basically like, he's like sort of a Chad, but he's hella cool and just, you know, easy to hang out with. But he can maybe be a Chad if he just does like a few things. But I heard Brads are supposed to be really cool. I didn't know that was a bad boy Chad. Maybe that's really what it is.
Reading social media comments.
I could see you though. I could see you being a Brad, and I mean that in the sense of the definition as like the guy that bullies, not bullies. You're not a bully, but someone who challenges the bullies. You know, like the coolest guys are the guys that fight back against the bullies. But like they're hella strong too, so the bully's like, oh crap, I finally met someone that can like fight back. You know what I'm saying? It's like the best.
Seeing what the media or academia or even the government says. This is a harsh pill for many to swallow, and most won't believe it even if it's shown to them. But by the end of the video, you'll see why this is true. The other side of this is there's a large community of men who just go, don't worry about these issues, just grind harder, bro, at being successful, bro.
Oh yeah, so he's talking about the self-improvement gurus, right? And the self-improvement gurus would be someone like Myron Gaines, or someone like, you know, Andrew Tate. Honestly, a lot of the folks in the manosphere, at least for the last couple of years, that got really big, I would say most of them are what I'd call the self-improvement gurus. I use the root guru instead of grifter. Some people would call them grifters. I just try to be as charitable as possible. But self-improvement is good and it's important. Everybody's got to do it. But when it gets to the point where it's just like the answer, you know that Chinese proverb where it's like when they have a hammer and everything looks like a nail? Sometimes the self-improvement gurus tend to just prescribe self-improvement for every possible problem, and it gets annoying. And that's also why we're going to be looking at, let me just pull it up here so I have it. Especially if there's time after this. I wanted to look at the Jubilee episode with Myron Gaines, and it got a lot of controversy, but basically the episode.
How many different brands of lube do you?
Oh my god, I hate it when they have the autoplay on these things. Anyways, it's where the hell is it? Oh, it's the fat versus jacked. Let me see. Fat versus fit. That's what it was. This one right here. It's kind of long, but basically they invited this guy. This is Myron Gaines, and you know, he kind of brought his sort of manosphere talking points into like what I would otherwise consider normal fitness people versus like normal people who aren't in shape. And it was like a whole thing. So we'll watch that after.
Also like to call me a loser for even talking about these issues. This is the social equivalent of a foreign country conquering your nation,
I will say, though, we're about 8 minutes in, and we haven't gotten to the actual discussion of the incel. So far, he's just trying to combat what is, you know, as soon as anybody talks about it, you get associated with being an incel. He doesn't want to be called an incel. He's trying to, you know, get that out of the way. And I get it, because that's what a lot of people do. So if you come out seeming like a champion for the incels, you will instantly be labeled an incel. But I will say one of the mistakes that I think like the incels will do, and that makes them not liked, is what they will do is kind of have this hype, some of them, this highbrow, like I'm very philosophically smart and better than you. And you can be logically right in something, right? But when it comes to, and I'm not the guy to ask for dating advice, but I am someone who didn't get chicks and then managed to be able to figure it out a little bit. But, you know, if you're in there playing the game, you know what I'm saying? Being philosophizing and being logically right about something is not going to help you win the game, so to speak. So just because you're logically right about something isn't going to make someone want to be attracted to you. And a lot of times it pushes the other people away because they think that's what you're saying, you know? And people who are incels are in this incredibly vulnerable position where someone can say one thing and just destroy their entire sense of self. And it's always incredibly vulnerable, and that could lead them to doing some bad things when they just lose it finally.
its culture, language, and history. And if you bring it up, they'll say, you should just make a bakery and stop complaining to make some money. If this is a social issue which hurts a lot of people, we need to talk about it and deal with it. I want us all to be successful, but that's different from just ignoring the reality of the world. There's also a school of just do blank to date. Just go to church, go to the bar every night, hit on random girls in the street, use certain images in your dating profile. I know lots of entrepreneurial guys and players. They have tested in some form every single kind of these, and they're generally not that effective. The thing is that a trick like this could work for a small group of men, but then once women catch onto it, it'll stop. It's similar to the stock market or the labor market, which will adapt itself to any hacks people use to invest. All of these are really just people coping at dealing with a horrible situation in which they are powerless. The reason I have...
That's one thing I was thinking about earlier. Actually, yesterday I was thinking about this because I think I read like a post somewhere, probably on Reddit. And, you know, like when the red pill was just a subreddit on Reddit, one of the things was, you know, don't talk about Fight Club. Do not talk about, rule number 1, do not talk about Fight Club. And it's like, do not talk about the red pill. And the reason is because just like I was mentioning earlier, you cannot negotiate attraction. That's like one of the red pill maxims, okay? But when the red pill was new, guys who found that and really learned how to use that, it was kind of like you had this like little secret manual, you know what I mean? But now that it's everywhere, I mean, basically all these guys in the manosphere broke the rule, you know, do not talk about. But anyways, they made it big, and yeah, people are going to adapt to it now if they can spot the rules. But for the most part, you know, I don't think everybody's bought
this giant intro is that this is a topic which, whenever it's broached, people just refuse to speak about it rationally and shut down. For
okay, we're finally getting to the topic.
They treat incels as if they're subhuman vermin, and anyone who speaks up about this is a whining loser. Meanwhile, for a large segment of young men, they're being consumed by so much rage on this issue that they've lost the ability to think rational, or they're being consumed by the powerlessness of the situation and thus cope about solutions that aren't real.
Real quick, this is like the 4chan frog Pepe, and let me just tell you personally, man, like I know it's funny and I know that the memes are funny and all that stuff, but when I see the frog, like to me, this is just a symbol of depression. And it's like, I don't know, man. I get it. I know people are on 4chan. I know there's funny stuff on there, but it's like the cost of the funny memes is to just be in this complete place of just depression, and it's not worth it, man. The frog is not worth it.
If I didn't have this segment, this video would turn into that, and I want to avoid that so it can remain constructive. A large reason that people become so emotional at the incel rhetoric is that it's an emperor's new clothes moment for our society, in which having to acknowledge that this large demographic of young men has been done wrong by our society would force us to come to terms with the lies and ideologies which we use to maintain our right to rule. And thus we attack the incels as a demographic because they force us to realize that our worldview is incorrect. Part 2, the greatest crisis of our time.
All right, we made it past the intro. Okay, this is something I've seen before too. This is the young male virginity on the rise, 27%. Share of men under 30 who report 0 female sex partners since they turned 18. Damn.
1/3 of men under 30
from 18 to 30
are virgins. 1/3 of men under 30 have had no sex in the last year either. Something like half of young men haven't walked up and spoken to a girl in the last year, and something like 1/4 of young men have never approached a girl in their lives. 2/3 of young men are single. Well, I think for guys my age, and I'm 22, the numbers are probably around 80%. The thing is that these are the kinds of numbers which people tend to feel sensitive about or cope with. Thus, the real numbers are undoubtedly higher. These numbers are absolutely horrifying. I think are symbolic that there is a serious issue. I hope people can understand why, when I look at this, I see what is likely the most important issue in our society. This is not to say there are not other very serious issues, but reproduction and mating are the most pivotal things in the human condition. Thus, when you create an issue with them, you're ripping the entire society apart. Something I'd like to teach older people is that whatever was going on when you were young is no longer the case. You see a similar thing with economics, where baby boomers often can't comprehend how economically bad it is for young people, in that Gen Z today has 90% less spending power than the baby boomers did in their 20s. The world is completely different for reasons I'm going to explain over this video. The biggest mental bottleneck here is that older people don't realize that dating today is no longer reasonable or rational. Things have gotten so skewed that people are acting in incredibly irrational and self-serving ways. The fact that there's an entire branch of data science based around dating, which is incredibly popular, is a sign that we're not in a good place. We have a bunch of metrics which we use to assess when societies have revolutions, but one of the most powerful is the average age of marriage. In every society in which the average age of marriage goes above age 28, there will be a civil war or revolution, as people are designed to procreate, and as that gets too difficult, they then burn down the system so they can roll the dice to get at least some shot of having their genes survive.
I think the last numbers for average age of marriage is around 30. I think it's just above 30 for men, and I think for women it was about 27 or so, but I'm sure he'll go over that. But that doesn't bode well. For me, the X factor, whenever it comes to anything like this, always is like technology. And the one thing about humans that sort of get us past the hump of any cyclical disaster, and just like my imagination anyways, because I can't prove none of this, is the X factor of technology. But depending on how that works, maybe it'll satiate some stuff, maybe not. But I mean, that's pretty dark. That doesn't bode well. So I guess that's why he says 2 years.
The birth rate is now collapsing at a precipitous and terrifying level. It's scary to watch, as almost every country in the world, except the poorest, are now...
Oh yeah, I forgot to say that. Trevor, thank you. Yeah, if you guys could please hit that like button, that'd be really freaking awesome. Just helps me with the algorithm. Smash that like button and hit that subscribe button.
Unsustainable birth rates. It's falling very rapidly and not stabilizing anywhere, rather just going down and down.
Oh, I gotta see the countries real quick.
Stabilizing any.
The countries in red have sustainable birth rates. This is happening at exponential speed. Okay, so I'm kind of surprised India is not red. They typically, I think the birth rate's pretty decent there. But Iran's low too. That's interesting.
Rather just going down and down. In a country like South Korea, for every 100 of their people they have today, they will have 4 in 100 years at the current rate. The thing is, this isn't happening in the lab, but rather in the real, messy political world. What would the social ramifications of a change this big be? Furthermore, this is an example of how bad things can get if the sexes don't get along. A society with bad dating and marriage is a society which won't survive. This is a topic which I've made this video about, but there are 3 key factors which push dating to be what it is today. The first being the dating apps, which on a systematic level massively destroy the dating balance between men and women. What occurs here is that since it makes it incredibly easy for men to reach women, and women are naturally very picky, is that you end up with horrifying inequality. If Tinder, the biggest dating app, was a country, it would be the second most unequal in the world, behind South Africa and ahead of Venezuela. Tinder also filters for the most shallow thing, looks, and women tend to be even pickier on looks, while things like personality, game, or social class act as equalizers.
I mean, that's a manifestation of our change in laws too, right? It's just, if society's not strict about monogamy in that way, especially here, and people's families aren't really involved in who members of their families get married to, and it's just complete freedom, that's what it's gonna look like. So it's kind of crazy to see. Like, I see this and it's just like, this is what freedom looks like. You know what I mean? Like, when you're left to your own devices on choice, this is what it's going to be. But it's nothing like in the past, and basically what I wanted to point out was people would get married, and then it's like you can't really cheat on your partner without there being big consequences. But nowadays it's like there's a revolving door of people probably who are married, or they get divorced and then they're back in the dating pool again. So the dating pool is just really large, and people that step in it don't step out sometimes because they're in and out, or they got multiple partners or whatever, and that just creates a huge inequality, like he said.
Plus, what happens here is the top 10% of men sleep with the top 40% of women. Meanwhile, the bottom 80% of men get basically absolutely nothing from the dating apps, while the top 20% of men gets almost all of the women.
And the tough part is most of this right here, right? It's about procuring sex, basically, right? It's basically short-term interactions between the men and the women, because it's like this revolving door. So if, you know, this is where the red pill and the game and stuff like that comes in to play. And this is why basically the red pill Chilton manual, so to speak, to use Rollo's term, about intersexual dynamics and just what attraction is and how to foster it, is because game has become so necessary to know in order to try to be successful on the apps or to just try to figure it out. But even game, for some people, it's just it just sucks. It just ends up this way. But if it was just like a marriage society where you can't have sex outside of marriage, probably a lot more people would pair up according to class and looks or whatever. But instead you have this, and you're just stuck in this situation where you gotta do your best. Yo, Dart Sidonius, let me give you a shout out. It's good to see you. One thing I feel bad about, and I know he's going to probably go through and watch this, is Klaus. Klaus is in Germany, and I know I'm streaming like right in the middle of the night for him when he's sleeping, but I might start doing a second stream soon. I feel bad because I know he really wants to watch, but I wish everybody can be in here, you know, whenever they want to. But yeah, Dart Sidonius says, hey, what up? Video is interesting so far based on the last few minutes. Yeah, it's not bad so far. The beginning of it was just like a really long intro where he just kind of had to describe, hey, don't get mad at me for talking about this. Trevor says, guy did his homework with all these charts and stats, that's for sure. Yeah, I've seen his other video on the Mouse Utopia, which was why I subscribed to him, because I thought that video was really interesting. So if you guys want, his name's What If Alt Hist. You might want to check out his video on the Mouse Utopia.
This creates a giant class of dissatisfied men, while most women compete for a small group of men who have no interest in dating them. The second factor, one which I discuss in this video, is that feminism has abdicated standards on any level for women. Literally think of any standards you can hold a woman to without being called sexist in modern society. You can't expect a woman to be respectful, attractive, take care of the children, not cheat on you, not be promiscuous. We have loads of expectations on men in that they're expected to be wealthy, strong, charming, kind, politically safe, and about 30 other things. A study asked women what they wanted out of men, and there turned out to be over 300 different options. Ironically, men, when asked the same question, just said 3 things: that the woman is cute, kind, and interesting. However, even with all these expectations piled on men, women aren't expected to reciprocate with any effort on their part. Something which my male brain has trouble empathizing with, although I know on an evolutionary basis why women are like this, is that telling young women to keep a healthy weight, not be promiscuous, and to not be socially annoying is just objectively good advice if they want to get a good man.
The weight thing is interesting because, you know, it does apply to both genders in the sense of, like, I think if you look at the studies, both men and women have similar percentages of obesity. And I looked at this once, and my conclusion after looking at the data was 7 out of 10 people are overweight or obese. And about 3 out of 10 people are just overweight. About 3.5. We're like 3.5 people or 4 out of 10 people are actually clinically obese, right? So that would make 7 out of 10 people are fat, basically. And if you look at like the trend back before like 1970, you had some overweight people, like the 3 out of 10 overweight people might have been there, but it was just like 5% or less who were actually clinically obese. And then the clinically obese part goes up to about like 36% now, plus the 3 overweight people, you know, that you've already would have had that weren't obese, and you get 7 out of 10. So it's interesting. That's why I chose to put the Jubilee video after this, because it kind of goes in line with the self-improvement guru's advice. It's going to be like, don't be fat. And someone like Myron Gaines is going to say, you know, 80% of people aren't in shape or they don't even go to the gym. So if you as a guy cannot be fat, that already puts you up pretty high. And that's their justification for the self-improvement mantra. And that's a whole nother discussion about, is shame good or not? And we'll get to that after this.
And we constantly do the male equivalent, as I said before. But if you're offended at people saying that stuff, you're just offended by reality. The thing with all of this is that women are following the incentive structures provided to them by society. Most social things are, in fact, negotiations between competing groups with differing self-interests. If people are given leverage in a relationship, they will exploit it. For example, the advances in technology allowed mass government oppression in the 20th century since they could do it. Imagine with automation, you could see employers need employees less, thus creating a
Oh my God, dude, these things drive me freaking crazy right here. I'm sorry, this is an aside, but I went to Yosemite last Monday. I got some nice pictures. I should share those with you guys. I'll put them in the Discord. And man, it was like I hadn't gone to, I don't go to McDonald's, but we decided to go to McDonald's, me and my buddy. He had a photography job, an engagement photo shoot. So I went with him just for the hell of it and just to see Yosemite for the first time. But we went into the McDonald's by my house, which I haven't been in years, and they had these machines. And you got to keep in mind, California just made like minimum wage, I think $20 now. So they had like 2 workers who would not even come to the register, and you had to like use these machines. And we ordered stuff, and they got the order wrong. They missed hella stuff. It was just like I had to keep going by the counter and be like, hey, excuse me. And yeah, this is the future right here.
Balancing labor and capital. Thus, employers could effectively treat employees as slaves, since employees don't have the leverage to push back against it. Human nature is very easily fallible, and thus whenever someone doesn't have an incentive to act well, they just won't. What has occurred with the combination of dating apps and feminism is that women never actually have to think about men's needs or wants ever really in society. Society actually tells them on a regular basis that screwing over men is the moral thing to do.
See, and the interesting thing about this is when it comes to just sex, that's what I would classify as short term. And you can be in a basically low commitment. Like you can meet someone off a dating app and you guys could even be seeing each other for 5 years. But if it's just for seeing each other and hanging out and you guys get your needs met, that to me is still short term, even if it's been going on for 8 years. But it becomes long-term commitment to me once you guys decide to either get married or even if you're not married and you have a child together. Now, when it comes to the short-term commitment, women can get that a lot easier and men can't, and that's a problem for men. Women start to run into the trouble on the back end when it comes to trying to secure a long-term commitment thing where it's just like, hey, I want to start a family or I want someone to marry me. Then that tends to become an issue for them on that side. And that's why I like the soft guy era stuff, because they're basically using their leverage of negotiating for relationship and marriage against the women. So a lot of how the MGTOW red pill stuff started were guys who got married and then got screwed over and divorced. But what's been found out about that is, you know, women have fun, and then when they hit a certain age, they marry a guy that's lower down on the ladder of that sort of arrow hierarchy thing that he was showing us. And then that would be the provider guy, right? And then after a few years, a divorce would happen. And then so all these guys came together, started sharing notes. They met the guys who weren't getting any chicks in the first place. And then those two communities kind of combined to become what we have now. But the thing that I like about the soft guys is the soft guys are basically saying, hey, ladies, when you come back down the ladder to find someone to provide for you, we don't want to be your safety net anymore. So that's changing the game on all this stuff. And, you know, so I think that's pretty cool.
YouTuber Alexander Grace, who has a great channel, has compared the female experience today to being jostled by cabbies or people trying to sell you stuff in the third world. They're so desperate for your time and energy that they come across as annoying. Someone once put together that an attractive woman in a major city can get 1,000 offers of sex in a week, and which is not
See, offers of sex, right? Not offers of marriage or relationship.
Common. She'll get 200 likes a day on dating apps, combined with parties, guys catcalling her, and other stuff like that. I think it's completely reasonable to have empathy to think that if this were to happen to a person, what it would do to their ego. Another thing is that people have just socialized a lot less due to the rise of these screens. And what that means is that dating apps are becoming practically the only option for dating, in which a majority of young people's relationships come from online. That means that the flaws in these dating app systems become exacerbated across the entire society. And as women have so much selectivity in the dating apps, that means they don't have to do stuff in person and go out to meet people in person. The thing is that this creates two different bad attitudes among the sexes. Since sexual selection is so easy among women, they don't prioritize for long-term happiness, but rather short-term thrills, which is why women go after high-value guys who won't commit to them and date bad boys. On the other side, it builds up feelings of rage, sexual frustration, loneliness, impotence, and powerlessness among men. One of my hot takes that people on the right...
You know, and it's funny because it's like it builds that up amongst men that are lower down on the hierarchy, and then also for women, but women tend to experience that later once they're looking for marriage and the guys that they're interested in aren't giving it to them. And then they come back and they're pissed off too, right? So that's how you might get a woman in her late 30s or 40s that's dealing with that. And there's a guy that I like, Orion Taraban. He's got a channel called Psych Hacks, and he talks about the sexual market value or whatever coming together at around age 30. So men start here and women are up here, and then once they get to about 30, that crosses each other, and then men start going up and women start going down, basically. So I don't know. I just think it's important to point out that there's resentment on both sides, and I really do think that I kind of see society as like this pyramid sometimes, you know, and there's a hierarchy. And I feel like people get abused from people on the top, and then what they do is they just pass on that abuse to people on the bottom. So, you know, a woman might be married, you know, or going out with one of these top guys. Oh, man. I think I'm having some frame issues. It seems the stream is having frame drops. I just saw my OBS that said it was red, so you guys might have missed what I just said there, but stream is back. Okay, perfect. You guys probably lost it for a bit. Yeah, I was just talking about that the resentment builds on both sides. It's not just the man's side. It's also the woman's side. JP, good to see you, man. Cut out for a second, refresh the page. Okay, well, then maybe you guys heard what I was just saying about like the hierarchy of abuse, where it's like you got the people at the top, they treat some of the people like crap, and then when those people get back in, they treat everybody at the bottom like crap. So it's like if you're a woman and you're with this quote-unquote high-value guy, and then he doesn't want to commit to you long-term, you feel like you've been used, you're pissed, you're heartbroken. They get back into the dating market, and then maybe they match with some guy who's lower down on the hierarchy, and they just pass on that abuse, right? And men will do that same thing, right? Like they become this sort of player, not willing to commit guy, because the first chick they were with, you know, did them dirty. Maybe they got cheated on, they got their heart broken. So there's just all this misplaced abuse. You know, it's just going down the pyramid. Hopefully the internet doesn't cut out like that. I don't know why it did that.
Or worst off in all of this is women. The reason I say this is that women are by nature dependent upon other people and the society more so than men. Men, when isolated, do a better job of surviving and staying sane. As a general rule, if you put men under pressure, it'll probably make them stronger. Well, there's a higher chance they'll just break women. Our society...
I hear that, and you know, I don't mean to like argue his every point. I feel like that's kind of annoying. I just think this guy is like really smart, because I've seen some of his videos, so he's just like really intelligent. So I feel like I gotta try to push back a little bit just for the hell of it, but not in a bad way. Like I think this guy is very well researched and stuff. But it's like the counterpoint to this is like who deletes themselves, you know, more like who hits the game over button on the game more? Is it men or women? I mean, women, they say men are more successful at actually going through with it, but yeah, when men are alone, maybe they can be if they have a sense of purpose, but on other times they just call it quits to the game. You know what I'm saying? So I don't even really know who does better or not, but you know, we'll take his word for
Society
it.
pumps young women with the worst possible advice so as to keep them isolated and easier to manipulate. Young women have the worst mental health now of any demographic in society. I'm yet to meet a woman under the age of 25 who doesn't have a serious mental health issue. In the same
I don't even think he's wrong about that, man. You know, one thing that I found interesting, even working at child support, what I realized and what I learned is that for anybody to like work a job and be halfway decent at the job, you only really got to commit like 20% of your brain to do the job right, you know? And, you know, you got coworkers and like, yeah, they're all doing their job and they're good at their job. But then when you really get to know some of your coworkers, like sometimes they really like let you know what they believe and who they are. You kind of realize that other 80% of the person is sometimes really like strange and even sometimes bordering on like sanity and insanity. And I used to get like I used to be annoyed by small things, especially like in traffic and stuff. And then one day I was just driving to work and I was like, you know what? A lot of these people are on, you know, some type of medicines right now for like psychological health issues. And I just tend to find that it's a miracle that we have as much societal organization as we do. Because I feel like so many people are just right on the edge of like just losing it sometimes.
same manner that young men are lonely and single, it's also true of young women, albeit not as bad, with only half of young women being single as young men. Nearly half of Gen Z women are slated to never marry and be spinsters. Young women...
See, and that's what I'm like. Yeah, a lot of people are just single, or they're just in this merry-go-round of like go on the dating apps, you meet some chick, it's cool for a bit, and then all of a sudden it's like this isn't really gonna like lead into anything else because nobody really feels like doing that. And even for guys too, I think even for myself, like once you hit like girl 6, you tend to hit a wall. Okay, if you're a guy and then you can't get chicks, that sucks, and you have to break out of that. Then you do break out of that and you start getting chicks. And then after a certain point, you do hit another wall of like, okay, this is cool. You go on the app, you meet a chick, you go on a few dates, you sleep with them. It's fun. You do that for a bit. Maybe it lasts this long. Maybe it lasts the whole year. Maybe it lasts a little bit more. Maybe it lasts 3 months. And it's just like a thing. And then after a certain point, you're like, oh, okay, you know, I guess that's just what it is. And you are now confronted with another problem. And you're kind of right out there with the women who are just trying to figure out what the hell is the long-term play? What are we supposed to be doing? It's just that a lot more men are dealing with the I can't get anything wall first before they come up with that second wall. And then that's how you get Lila Rose questioning Jay Waller on, you know, whatever podcast and him getting frazzled. Oh, JP says, let's see what JP says. JP, appreciate you being in here. Let's get you on the big screen. JP says he's not too wrong. A lot of girls of my age, 25, have some sort of issue. Maybe some slight anxiety to major depression. Y'all ain't wrong. Yeah, I believe him too. I mean, it really is. And, you know, just to bring it back to the men, and I can speak for myself too, because I didn't start dating until way later. I'm 34 now. And I didn't start getting chicks, I'm be honest, until I was 30. I was that guy in the statistic. From 18 to 30. So I got to be honest with you guys about that. And now I feel great, you know, on the inside. I don't know about great, but I feel pretty good. Like, it's just hanging out the chick I'm seeing yesterday. And that's fine, you know, but sometimes I forget and I remember in what dark places I was in from those ages. Like there were some dark times. Like forget about the women and their mental health. But the men's mental health too, you know what I mean? So you got both the men and the women are in bad mental health. And I do feel for the guys that are stuck in that situation, man. Hey, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, my birthday just passed. That's why I went up to Yosemite and I was in Monterey prior to that. Maybe I'll share some pics from that in the Discord. Yeah.
Men have a bad habit, in my opinion, of surrounding themselves with people who just affirm whatever they want to hear, which ends up giving them the worst advice, which they then rationalize with politics. The thing is, processes like this become cumulative issues in which they add up to be more than the component parts. This is something I talk about a lot in my video on the psychological Black Death, in which I believe our society is going crazy in general. This exacerbates everything going on, since you've removed the ability to rationally reset. This bleeds into my video on Mouse Utopia, which I won't bring up here.
You guys got to watch this video. It's about an experiment. I can't remember. It was some prestigious university, but it's about scientists figuring out like what makes society collapse and stuff like that. And it was just super interesting, but it did not bode well again for civilization. And it showed how certain things about civilization can make people kind of stop trying after a certain amount, and it was not good.
Great detail since it's so depressing and horrible, but watch the video if you want to know more. It's hard to convey in words how desperate most...
Oh my God. JP, wow, I gotta shout you out for that, man. JP with the super chat, $9.99, man, that's a lot of money, and I do appreciate that. Thank you. Found you from Coach Greg Adams. Wow. Man, I love Coach Greg Adams. Like, I really do. I'm not just saying that. I do have his book, Free Agent Lifestyle. And, you know, oh, man, I can't get it to focus. But Coach Greg Adams' show, I really believe, is the really, like, one of the most entertaining shows on YouTube. I watch it in the mornings when I'm making breakfast and driving to work. But, again, man, thank you a lot for that, and I appreciate you coming in here. I'm not gonna lie, man, I felt a little bit pressured because Coach did such a great shout out to me, and I know I haven't done a child support video in a while, and I feel bad about it because I feel like he sent traffic over here and that they might be interested in child support. But the thing is, man, is sometimes I just can't talk about it all the time because, like, I feel like I'll lose my mind if I just talk about one subject. Sometimes I feel like just flipping over the damn table. You know, I was on Pearl's show also, and I got a lot of subscribers from her, but I will do a reaction to Coach Greg Adams' reaction to me on Pearl's show, just because I want that on my channel, so I still got to do that. But I'll post that as a standalone vid. But again, man, I appreciate you. All right, let's get back.
Young men feel in dating. It's something which they very rarely admit, often to themselves, in which bringing this up makes them angry, but it's an unspoken subconscious terror which racks my generation. It's a sense of betrayal by a society which would rather they never reproduce, or better, never be born in the first case.
See, there we go, shaming the bear. I haven't seen this, and I think this is going to be interesting. But the reason this whole topic of shame is interesting is because after this video, we're going to watch Myron Gaines on Jubilee, where it's the fat guys versus the jack guys. And one of the things that you'll see, like Andrew Tate or the Myrons or of the world, or the self-improvement gurus, as I like to call them, is they're always like, bring back shame. We got to bring back shame. And I don't exactly agree with that. Like, I can see tough love being important. But it's like, if you got this incel guy and you sit here and you start shaming the hell out of him to where you're bullying him, that might push them to a point where they do something bad and hurt themselves or others. So we'll talk more about shame later as when we watch Jubilee, depending on what he says. Oh my gosh, Trevor with the $5. Man, I appreciate that. Oh. No message on here. It's all good. But hey, I wanted to highlight this. I appreciate you. JP says, I like your viewpoint on different topics. I understand. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. I do got to get back on the horse. I've been kind of like, just like to be very honest, from like a mental point of view, part of me just like is even kind of tired of the manosphere a little bit. But it's one of those things where I see a topic and it just brings me back in because it's hard not to talk about. But I do want to make a video about dowry. I put up a very interesting tweet. You know what? I'm going to bring up the tweet right now and just read it to you guys, just to show you guys where my mind is on that. Oh God, I hope I'm logged in. I kind of went on a rant in my, oh, thank God, I am logged in. I just saw a Pearl tweet. Pearl's so funny. She's like, if you were not a virgin on your wedding day as a woman, you have zero right to call out men for sleeping around. Okay, let's see. Yo, this right here is what I posted. It got a lot of reposts. Pearl did repost it herself too. It got 25 reposts and you know, a decent amount of likes. But I talked about dowry because the big missing part, a big missing part of this whole thing is understanding the history of dowry and how this actually justifies why women should be paying half of the expenses, especially since they work. iTrevor says there was a mic drop emoji. Also, soundboard doesn't work. Oh crap, is the soundboard not working? Oh shit, that's not good. That is not good. Oh shit.
Part 3.
Okay, at least this is coming in. I'll try to do a reset on the soundboard. Maybe that'll come in or not. Sorry guys, I don't. My Focusrite's been giving me some issues lately. So, sorry about having to slow this down. Off, on, okay. Still not coming in. Well, you know what? The hell with the soundboard. Sorry guys, we lost the soundboard. That makes me hella sad and very, very pissed off. It was working before, it ain't working now. Let me just plug this. I see it working there, but it's not coming in. No, it's not. Sorry, I gotta just... Thanks for letting me know, iTrevor. The technical difficulties are just going crazy on this right now. But just give me like... You know what? I'm gonna just try to mess with it one more time. If it doesn't work, then that's just how it's gotta be. And we're just gonna have to live without it. MIDI routing audio Focusrite. What in the high hell is Focusrite Thunderbolt? Nope, didn't work. Edit preferences. USB running. It's not feeding back. Oh, okay. The hell with the soundboard. We've lost the soundboard.
Shaming the bear. One of the sad realizations of my life was coming to terms with the idea that our elite are not intelligent or capable. They were making their decisions based off fear, reaction, and stupidity. The evil cabals do exist, but they're not particularly competent or brilliant. The reason I say this is I see such profound disbalance, almost like a room that's about to burst with pressure versus another one next to it, which is a vacuum, sucking in pressure. I just can't believe no one else sees this besides me. These two rooms are the arrogance and delusion of our elite, which uses young, unmarried women as a demographic to pull authority from, and dissatisfied young men. I've talked about this calculation in multiple videos for multiple hours, but to boil it down, it's very simple in fact, that the group which holds power is stupid. Don't taunt the bear. The other thing which I don't understand is the lack of an out. When I invite people to events or to do stuff, I always give an out. I'll say, I get the impression you're busy, but if you'd like to come, you're welcome to. It's a way of not hurting someone's face, which is one of the most important parts of social interactions. If you want to oppress a group, establish a path by which they can cooperate with the system as a way to divert talent that would otherwise rebel. This is why the British recruited the Scottish or Irish to fight and populate their colonial empires, or why the Romans would co-opt and assimilate the ruling classes of the regions they conquered. Modern dating is a humiliation ritual for young men. Society won't tell you the rules of how to attract women, and in fact, it will give you the exact wrong advice.
That's honest to God true, and that's where the whole red pill thing comes in, right? Because, you know, that was the kind of forget about the let's be amoral for a second and forget about if this sounds mean or whatever, but. You know, that's where you could find a little bit more real advice on the game, so to speak, versus just like the standard stuff about, you know, be nice, open the doors.
If you do learn what the rules are and share them, society will shame or cancel you. If you don't get girls, you'll be shamed. If you do too well with girls, you can easily get a false allegation which could ruin your life, or you'll be shamed for being a frat boy or fuck boy. If you try to hold your female partners to any standard, society will shame you for that. Try to hold...
I thought he was going to read this, but this is looks like his personal principles that he's developed for dating. Number 1, strive to look like you put effort into your appearance, but not try hard. Yeah, okay. Number 2, try to maximize emotional range. Women confuse extreme emotions for love, so try to get them to feel a lot of feelings around you early on. Number 3, test women for their sanity by their ability to accept that they can be wrong. Number 4, try to come across as cool and effortless in every interaction. Number 5, be in good physical shape. Very important. Honestly, I would probably put this one to like number 1. I'd probably move that from number 5 to 1. Number 6, it doesn't really matter what you say. She's listening to the tone and who you are. If you're confident enough, she will accept it. Assume she agrees. Number 7, create a frame early on for her to enter into. She needs this. That's pretty red pill right there. Number 8, being nice has no value here. If she's ridiculous, tell her. If you want something, say it. She'll respect you for this. The caveat to this is that if she doesn't want to deal with that, then, that's the end of the relationship. But that's where you're supposed to be willing to have someone walk away from you. So that's the other side of that. Number 9, use incrementalism, or gradually increasing the threshold for things. Women get scared by stark black or white choices and need gradient. Number 10, get into a flow state. Try to keep things low key until it's the right moment and strike, much like hunting. Number 11, figure out what your boundaries for what you're comfortable with and hold them at all costs. She will try to test these and won't respect you if she wins.
Your female partners to any standard, society will shame you for that, while she's able to complain about you for anything. One of the things which I'm shocked our culture accepts is that it's perfectly normal for women to complain about the men in their lives publicly and on the internet. One of my good friends had his girlfriend talk about his sexual inadequacies publicly on Twitter.
Oh, God, that would suck so badly. But yeah, that'd probably be the end of the relationship right there. Like, I guess if you post something anonymously, that's one thing. But if that's like her public Twitter profile and she, everybody knows you guys are going out, that'd be really bad.
Look at how on TikTok, there's an entire industry of women posting their dating advice with men, often talking about very private details, such as sex or things which the men said in confidence. This sort of thing is evil in that it's a complete violation of social trust. This sort of thing serves literally zero social benefit. These social platforms have a lot of control over the content they let out. How come this stuff is accepted, but YouTube will take down my videos on Southeast Asian anthropology or American regional cultures? This gets even worse with marriage, where there's a 50% chance if a man gets married, he'll get divorced, with in 70% of cases being started by the women, and among the college-educated ruling class, it's 90%. In statistically most cases, this is just because the woman got bored, not because the man did anything wrong, but she can often take a majority of a man's income and his children. The courts are obscene.
That's provided that you're the provider in the relationship. And yeah, typically we know women want that. This is where, the women are done. They come back down the hierarchy looking for the provider guy, the safe guy. And yeah, if you're in that provider role and she doesn't make money, and it ends, you're going to be the one paying. So I think what's really interesting, or what's important, is that men, this is why I like the soft guys. Like, I think we should make a term called financially safe. Like, in order for a guy to want to get married, you know how like women need to feel safe when they're with a guy, right? Like, especially for short term or, whatever. Men need to be like, I need to feel financially safe to make a marriage commitment to you. Like, what can you do to ensure I'm financially safe?
Biased against men. Society will take a woman's word whether or not there's any evidence behind it. I had some tweets which went viral where I talked about all the ways young, especially white men, are actually discriminated against in society. We've already talked about discrimination in the courts, which, if you want to add another element, includes the discrimination against Western citizen populations or political conservatives. I compared the oppression of young white men in the Western world to literal conquered nations, like the Irish under English colonialism, and found the only difference to be that the Irish weren't allowed to vote or own property, while modern whites can. This also includes job hiring, in which 95% of new jobs created since COVID in major companies have gone to minorities. This means that there's basically a war by established whites who run these companies against the young men trying to get started. Almost all young white men in big companies have been told that they won't get promoted, and instead diversity hires will.
So that's one of those things that it's like, it's probably true to some extent, but it also sounds like a little exaggerated, but it's probably that's probably what it is. At the very least, most guys have a problem where they're expected to be providers. But if you're culturally expected to be a provider for a marriage, then not being given priority when it comes to jobs that will allow men to be the providers first and foremost is an issue. So again, this is where the justification for women having to pay something in a relationship and a marriage comes in, because there is equal, opportunity employment now.
This is hard to overemphasize, in that in addition to the sexual inadequacy is financial inadequacy, which further emphasizes the sexual issues. One of the things I find shocking in my own personal network and with my personal projects is the insane level of quality I can get. I'll be working with people and think, I don't really have the money to pay you for this, but you should be the CEO of a company or working for the government's foreign policy. Instead, you're doing a project with the What If Altist guy since society stopped hiring white men. There is a giant class of obscenely competent young men who are dissatisfied and have nothing better to do. Part 4. Download this revolution. I saw this tweet which did very well, which said, "You don't understand. You have an entire generation of fighting-aged men with nothing worth living for. You should be scared." This summarizes how I feel, and I'm pretty sure the guy who wrote that tweet watches my channel. The thing I don't understand is how the elite goads young men and eggs them on. A thing is that humiliation is incredibly degrading, especially for young men, since they're society's foot soldiers and haven't passed on their genes yet. The thing with...
I think we're in this interesting place where, I've always thought about this. I feel like since the U.S. and a lot of countries have gotten nuclear weapons, and like obviously war goes on a lot, but it typically between big powers, nuclear powers, it happens through proxy wars in other countries. But for the most part, it's like with nuclear weapons, the mainland really is not threatened in a sense to where I just feel like, we'll probably have a big war soon, but I feel like for this long period, we haven't really had like a necessity of war. So that's kind of one thing also that leads to this, because the sort of use or utility, especially what men did, the nuclear age has kind of put that on the back burner a little bit, because it's like we don't need to mobilize as often anymore, since the deterrent, for another nation to want to come in here and start something it's just like, how do you do that if you're going to get nuked back? So that leaves us in this kind of surplus situation. Though I do feel like on a long enough timeline, eventually, society will cash in its chips. That would be us, the men, and send us off to war somewhere.
What shocks me is how much the left gloats over its victory. Removing young men from all culture, with Google Gemini as a great example. Not hiring almost any young men, or basically making humiliation rituals in the education or corporate system. If you're a wise conqueror, don't gloat in your victory too much, since you derive no benefit from it and you want the conquered to cooperate. That being said, the left is not wise. It is in fact suicidally delusional.
The thing about like patriarchy or women being oppressed is like, the reason they get away with this is because the entire argument has been framed from women have been oppressed since the beginning of time. Therefore, this is justified against men because you as a man have had this kind of unfair advantage since literally the beginning of human civilization, as far as a patriarchal order goes. But me personally, I don't buy that. I think you can maybe only make a case for women being oppressed truly once they were liberated from their own biology. But so long as women were women and like you didn't have birth control and these other things that can give women autonomy, or open up new vistas for women to allow them to be able to pursue things they couldn't before, then maybe you can say traditional standards oppressed women. But that's only very recently. But prior to that, like saying men have been oppressing women and every man's gotten an advantage, I just don't think is true. And for the most part, I think, men and women, like if you're lower down on the ladder, you're just given, the short end of the stick. Men may be even worse if you're just drafted with continuous wars and that's it for you, or you're just, you know, some serf somewhere, just a kind of land slave. I mean, there was a huge slave class for most of human history, and for the most part, that's kind of here. And that's another thing that kind of gets on my nerves, is like when people are like, we need to go back to the traditional world. And it's like, what, when slavery was a thing? Like, that's kind of what enabled a lot of the traditional world to happen. So it's like, we're not going back to that. And we live in this world where we've kind of taken a blender and we've blended all the classes together and everything that's different together. And we're just in this new place trying to figure out what to do now. But the people who are like, let's go back to this, I think are just not understanding that there's like a lot of other things in the dark shadow that enabled that kind of, whatever their imagination of what traditional living looked like, that enabled that to exist in the first place. You know, like, even if you look at Spartans, right? Like, Spartans are seen as this like symbol of masculinity. And everybody wants to be a Spartan. But it's like, if you read about Spartan history, every Spartan had like, you know, a good like 7 to 10 slaves, the helots, that would work the fields for them so that they could pay essentially for them to be able to eat at the mess halls so that they can practice, you know, being Spartans all day. And it's incredibly expensive to make a Spartan. There was, out of the population, the huge minority was the Spartans themselves, followed by this middle class merchant class that can go in and out of the place, followed by a overwhelmingly large amount of helots. And it's like, if we're all going to be Spartans over here, then I'm sorry, but slavery's got to come back, and I don't think that's coming back.
Another thing to keep track of is the two biggest influences young men have from women are porn and feminism. One of them makes them degrade women, seeing them as not respectable or as sex objects, while the other one is porn. The thing is, men hold the balance.
These guys are so like tactical. They got all the tactical stuff. As an aside, I know he mentioned, you know, I guess I gotta say corn or whatever. Let's just call it nudie videos. We'll just call it nudie videos. But I am an advocate of not watching that stuff and just avoiding it. Like, I don't think it's good for you in any way. You know, if you avoid it, I think it just kind of makes you more hungry and pursue and all that. That's just me personally, you know, I get it.
Actual physical force in society, and women have offset that over history by being kind and with sex.
I'm sorry, man. This guy with this mask, like, you know, he's just like living his Call of Duty fantasy right now.
And women have offset that over history by being kind and with sex. Men in general either view women as sex objects or wife material. Women...
That would be the Madonna whore complex, right? That is the Madonna whore complex. And, you know, we always do hear about the Madonna whore complex, but the important thing to note about that is women have their own version of that. And that's the bad boy versus the provider, right? Like, they struggle with that. I once had this coworker, and I think she was talking about some show she was watching. And one of the characters in the show was some woman talking to her friend, and she's just like, prison guy is the best sex of your life, but you don't marry prison guy. And I was like, oh, yep, there it is. Like, that is that same dichotomy. So men have that. Men have that also, you know, and it doesn't allow you to see the women as really human. Yo, Shadrach, welcome in. Man, I can't give you a shout out with my sound effects board because it's not working for some reason, which is incredibly disappointing and saddening to me, man. But I wish I can get that going for you, but I just really can't. So I'll have to get that figured out for the next episode. But yeah, man, I appreciate you coming in here in the house. Yeah, so yeah, that's basically where we're at.
For reasons I don't understand, can't figure this out, and so portray themselves as one and expect to be treated as the other. Men tend to view women who aren't of marriage material with complete contempt. The thing is, we've removed the positive feminine from life. It's hard for women to understand how dangerous that is. Women are the humanizing force on men, and pulling out the chance of taking in the positive feminine will turn men absolutely violent.
It's the tactical guys. These are the J6 guys. My bad. I'm sorry. I'm going to just try one more time on this sound effects kit just to see if I can get it. And if I can't, again, I'm just going to give up again. It just does make me see preferences, cell matrix. Audio MIDI settings. It has to be here through routing output. driver. Wasabi. Nah. Focusrite USB MIDI. God, I hope this doesn't ruin the stream. Nope, didn't work. Let me just change that. Off. Okay. Bollocks to it all. I tried.
Men like violence, and if they're not incentivized against it, things are going to get really ugly. I remember there was this TV show where they tried to get a group of young men and young women to survive on an island by themselves. And what happened next was basically what you'd expect, where the young men did very well and the young women had to be rescued by the TV crew. And although this is silly, I think it's indicative of some underlying reality of the human condition, in that, in the state of nature, it's men's role.
Dude, I'm not even gonna lie to you, man. I've always wanted to go to a Renaissance fair. I haven't, but someday I'll go to a Renaissance fair and see one of these things.
To fight against the outside world with things like war or the jungle or farming, and women form the heart of the community away from all of that. And if you look over history, you find that there are patriarchal waves roughly every 500 years, with previous examples being the Augustan reforms, the Reformation, the fall of Rome around 1000 AD and more. So it wouldn't be that strange to imagine we'd have another one of these soon. And what happens with these is that in a world that's barbaric, men install themselves as higher social status than women because they're more responsible for facing the threats of the outside world. And then as society gets safer,
Yeah, and that's the problem now, right? It's like we don't really have I would say we don't have a true outside threat. If the U.S. ever collapses, it's going to be because of an internal thing, right? So it's like if men's sort of purpose is taken away, especially in a nuclear age where, you know, the shores of the U.S. aren't exactly threatened in the same way, then it becomes this huge internal struggle that we're now dealing with now, which is like a psychological thing.
Social status rises, and men are willing to do this because it helps the entire society and them in general, until what happens is the men have no incentive to cooperate in the society, and thus the society falls apart and the cycle restarts. A point I'd like to throw out here is that we're getting to the point where among young people, the political divide is largely that of gender, where across the industrialized world, most young men tilt right and most young women tilt left. And you look at this and you think, how are they going to breed and start families? And this trend is just getting more and more pronounced over time. I was talking to my good friend Homath about where you meet women today. We've already spoken in this video about how online dating won't work for men. However, on top of that, picking up girls in places like parks or bookstores has become taboo alongside work. This leaves...
Yeah, man, that's what it is. This is how people met, like way back in, like, let's say 70s, through friends. So it looks like through friends was the biggest one. And then through family or work. I don't know why. I always just like, I just cannot, I don't understand. Like, I know people meet through work and that's kind of quasi-normal, but for me, it's always like, ooh, that's not safe. Not safe, but I don't know, man. It just seems like you just shouldn't do that. Then you had school, through family. Looks like that used to be higher. Look at that, through family, and then it became friends. This is dating culture becoming a thing. I think one of the reasons that through friends has gone down and online has gone up is that if you meet someone through friends, there is this kind of social expectations. Like you can't just meet someone, do a pump and dump, and then leave or just ghost them, right? Because if you're meeting someone through your friend network and you try something like that, it's going to like reverberate that negative impact into your friend group. And they're gonna be like, why did you do that? That was messed up. Like, that's my friend. Like, she's my friend. Why would you just ghost her like that? I set you two up. You know what I mean? Because like, I think what this is society saying, hey, we're just interested in sex and we're just looking for short term. So we would actually prefer looking for people online because you can pull the okey doke and then just dip out of there afterwards, you know? But if but prior to that, so that's why you see Friends go down. Otherwise, people would be like, you know what? This online stuff is really bad. Like, let me go back to meeting people through Friends, but they're not doing that. Don't stick your pen in the company ink. Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that would happen even when I worked at child support. Like, I saw people get married, have kids, get divorced over there. That was a thing, you know what I mean? Of course, they were older than me, so they're from a different generation. But yeah, I tend to have a rule of like, nah, man, I'm good. And I've had some instances where, it probably could have happened, or I could tell, but I'm just like, nah, man, like that's just not worth it for me.
Or a nightclub,
like especially if you've gone through a bad breakup where you've really got your heart broken, no contact and not talking to them is the thing that helps. But like if you have to work with them, that would really suck because you got to see them every day, and that's just tough.
The thing is that bars or clubs don't tend to attract good women and skew the odds against men in every possible way. The logic for nightclubs is to offer women attention as easily as possible while lowering the chances a woman has to offer anything to the man, which is why women like them.
Man, I don't really know like the stats on this, but I think eventually nightclubs will just start going out of business, except for maybe in some places where it's just like super expensive. But man, nightclubs just don't make sense to me, especially for how much money it costs. And I heard from a lot of people that nightclubs aren't the same, because I got buddies who used to go to nightclubs like back when in the heyday of nightclubs. But now I think the culture's changed, and if you go there and it's just not fun, I don't know. Why would guys keep going there? I just feel like a lot of them will just go out of business eventually.
Likewise, people say you can meet girls at community or friend groups, but as of now, there's an unspoken rule in a lot of these that you shouldn't date them, since it'll disturb the intricate friend networks which make up those communities.
Yeah, it'll disturb the friend network, because back in the day, people would date and actually get married and do that kind of stuff. But nowadays, it's like no one wants to do the long-term commitment. So if you date someone in your friend group, and when it inevitably ends, it's like it's going to be some drama.
As well as that, women tend to just do less activities than men. Most young women just go to work and then go home. Homath then said one of the most blackpilling things in my life, with, I guess there's nowhere anymore. In my personal experience, of the 50 most handsome, charismatic, intelligent, and successful guys I know, the vast majority are single. Even though they have a lot to offer, they just aren't that many mechanisms through which you can meet the other sex. There was a point...
I wonder if he means like single as in they're just not in a relationship, or that they're not meeting any women at all. Because if they're successful and handsome, then they're at least probably having these short-term engagements. Like I'm sure if they go on the apps, they'll meet someone, eventually. It's just that they're not getting married. But if they're not meeting any women, that's weird.
In my life in which a majority of my friends were fuckboys, and they could generally get laid a lot,
there you go,
but not meet women they wanted or respected enough to date or marry. This revolt, which would be tied...
I'm telling you, man, the answer to this problem is really the dowry. It's just like, okay, if you're not going to be able to meet a woman that's a quote-unquote marriage material, and we all start pairing up at age 30 when everyone's just been out here messing around, and you're a guy and you're just like, you know what, there's a high likelihood that this is going to fail just because of what the culture is now. And if she really wants to get married, like she needs to bring some kind of wealth to the marriage. Like if she's been working from 18 to 27 and she's got nothing to show for it, then like marrying her is a complete waste of time.
In with conservative politics and values would not be pushed by losers. The upper class men, even if their romantic lives are good now, realize how much in the long term the society is stacked against their reproductive self-interests, with stuff like divorce law, the indoctrination of their children, or the destruction of their societies in general. Revolutions work when there are counter-elites who support them rather than just being peasant uprisings, which always get crushed. The Incel revolution would be led by Chads who would gather Incel soldiers to fight for them. Human nature is often a funny thing, and people look back in history and think, why do people wage war over such silly things like ethnicity, religion, ideology, etc.? And the reality is that if you look over human history, war is normal, peace is not, and every era of history will justify wars for whatever ideological reason matters to that society. And so historians looking back on this conflict won't see it as an incel revolution, they'll see it as an ideological war between the right and the left. And people will create ideological justifications and not admit how hard their lives are, even though the reason for the war is that their lives suck. The thing is, if you went back in time and interviewed the normal young men and soldiers fighting in historic wars, like, let's say the 30 Years' War, the Napoleonic Wars, they would say they were fighting because they couldn't get married or they couldn't find real work. And historians afterwards will rationalize the war for all these complex macro political and ideological reasons, but the reality is it's often just people's lives are too hard. This would be a war fought...
I mean, I think that's true to some extent. You know, I think people would be more likely to join the military if you don't have any, like, other good prospects to avoid that.
Over ideological reasons, but keep in mind is 80% of young men are currently screwed in the modern dating market, and young men are those who fight wars, would mean that both the right and the left's militaries would be made up of sexually frustrated young men. The great irony here is that as women have gained more social power, they have used this to abdicate responsibility, which in turn makes them more fragile. The ends point of modern feminism has been to abdicate responsibility for women. A woman can never have her feelings hurt on political topics, or it's...
I mean, they really need to update the draft and get women into the draft. That's the other side of that they've refused to do.
Intellectual ones never feel awkward around men, socially, or held responsible in the failures of her own
the
life.
patriarchy.
The problem is that reality is a horrible demon which will keep kicking you in the face if you don't want to listen to it. This has created a weak population which is incapable of resisting the revolution. One of my hobbies is data harvesting. I talk to hundreds of young people and ask them their opinions on various subjects. I also read the comment section of any content creators I can as a way of figuring out what the cultural zeitgeist is. I also release certain tweets and do polls to collect information on what the public thinks on various things. On a purely intuitive basis, and you don't have to believe me, a large group of young men are desperate enough that they need to do this to not go crazy. Technological advances have made the ability to organize secretly through various encrypted online...
Will says, I watched the new Barbie movie and was disappointed with the lack of My Dinner with Andre vibes. Man, I've never watched that. Well, My Dinner with Andre, I'm not sure what that is. I did watch the Barbie movie. I actually saw that in theaters. The woman I was seeing at the time, I'm not going to say I got trapped into it, but you know, she was like, what are you doing this weekend? I was like, nothing. What's up? And then she was like, you want to see the Barbie movie? And I was like, oh. And then I was like, okay, hey, you know, the Ninja Turtles movies in there. I think we can go check that out. And she's like, all right, you know, maybe, you know, whatever. So I start looking at ticket times, and the Ninja Turtles actually was not due to be in theaters until like another week or so. So we ended up seeing the Barbie movie. I will also say that was the one time she paid for anything. Not that I ever expected her to. Again, when it comes to short term, or as I like to say, low commitment dating, I just pay for everything, whatever, I get it. Now, if that conversation evolves into, hey, where's this going? I'd like to have kids someday. Then I'll be like, you know, that's a great idea. How much are you bringing in to finance that venture? But anyways, yeah, she made it a point to pay for the tickets for the Barbie movie. Whatever. It was cool. I did actually kind of enjoy the movie, if I'm being honest with you. I always kind of wanted to do a YouTube analysis of that movie. I just never got around to it. But I don't know. I think the movie was at least like watchable, and it had a lot of like symbolic stuff that I don't even know if they purposely put it in there, but I think it's kind of like almost unconsciously in there. But I really like that the movie starts off kind of giving an homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey with the I forgot what they called, you know, like that giant black the monolith. And the monolith in the Barbie movie was I guess Margot Robbie, but that Barbie standard, you know, and the women just being tortured by this Barbie standard because they can't live up to it. And I wanted to do an analysis of that movie, basically showcasing Andrew Tate as the new Barbie standard for men, this kind of hyper masculine sort of alpha of alphas, and the expectation of men expected to be like Andrew Tate in a way, and being shamed by the self-improvement gurus if you're not on your way there, kind of mirrors what women went through with the Barbie standard. But I never got around to it. I did think it was a good movie, though. I also like the Super Mario Bros. Movie that came out after.
Line methods very easy. People will say most young men are too fat, lazy, or docile to rebel. That might be true, but most people don't matter. In revolutions, there are tiny elites who mobilize the population. Normal people don't organize, thus their opinions don't matter, and they're conscripted by the radicals. Before the English Civil War, it was conventional wisdom that the...
He's basically saying we're 2 years away from a civil war in the U.S. I mean, if you listen to his language, it's mainly about, like, okay, being conscripted into something. He really means like an actual revolution. If you want to hurt the system, frankly, just keep doing what you're doing. Just play games and just don't contribute, and just don't be profitable to the folks on top of you as much as you can. But it sounds like he's talking about an actual violent revolution.
English had grown too soft to fight. They didn't get a choice as the Cavaliers and Roundheads conscripted men to fight for them. One of the few valid arguments against this point stems from the Mouse Utopia video. This is a long enough argument where I can't get into here, but read this text wall for more information.
All right, we're reading the text wall. The Mouse Utopia study was done 30 times in the 60s and 70s when this happened. Number 1, 9 mice were put in a pen with perfect conditions. Food, no disease, lots of space. Their numbers ballooned. Okay. The mouse social structure fell apart before hitting full capacity. I think full capacity, I can't remember, but in biology, I took biology in college, and there's this thing called the K line. And let's say you have an island and the population hits the K line, there's usually an immediate drop. So whenever any given population in a system meets whatever that K number is, there's an immediate drop, like in that generation. Female mice became aggressive and refused to breed. All right, sounds like feminism. Male mice became effeminate and lost their sex drive. Mice experienced a spiritual death, with them losing the will to live. Mice became autistic and lost the ability to follow social cues. There were hordes of aggressive nihilist mice who would kill pro-social mice. The mouse birth rate totally crashed precipitously. There were gangs of homeless mice, and mice fled to the edges. The mouse colony completely died.
The nihilism and degeneracy of modern culture is unprecedented. A study on mice from 1960s and 70s, which gave them perfect conditions for population growth, which then resulted in seeing their society fall apart, had very similar and scary conditions to the modern world. The thing is, the mice grew effeminate and weak. They stopped breeding. An important thing to think about, and the best argument against this to steelman the case, is that if you look at Mouse Utopia, the mice had rapid declines in male hormones like testosterone, similar to what we're seeing in the Western world today among men. And I feel kind of nervous saying stuff like this, because when you give someone 5 options and a single out, they'll often immediately jump on the out without thinking as a way to not deal with the issue. But perhaps due to Mouse Utopia, young men are too weak to actually fight. That being said, knowing young men, I don't think that's actually the case. That being said, if young men don't stand up for their position, even on a peaceful basis, our mouse colony is doomed, as...
I think as far as like a peaceful thing could do, I think men, and I hate to say this because I'd hate that this becomes the next grift in the manosphere. That would be a damn shame, but I think like in the U.S., for instance, I think somebody can start a lobbying group, like the NRA, the National Rifle Association. Like, people would donate to the NRA so that they can lobby government for gun rights. You know what I'm saying? And, you could be a card-carrying member of the NRA, and, you're going to donate money and go to the meetings or whatever. Men could have something like that for men's rights. Like, you can be a card-carrying MRA member, like the Men's Rights Association. Just donate to whoever started that, So, like, maybe Shah tomorrow does the paperwork and gets a lobbying organization for men's rights. And then pretty soon I'm on YouTube tomorrow asking you guys to donate money to me so that I can actually get down there to the government, to the Capitol steps, and start lobbying for change. Now, if there was enough of this, I think it could make some impact. Because honestly, man, the biggest indictment against men is the fact that women have been able to actually lobby and create legal change. You know what I mean? Like, men are always like, we're leaders and we know how to work together and be logical. But for some reason, we're not doing that. But the part that sucks is, like, I can totally see some grifters coming out and saying, hey, like, donate to my lobbying organization, you know, and we can make that happen. And I've thought about this for a while. And the sad part is like, yeah, okay, you know, I'd be like, maybe I wouldn't do that. But I just have a feeling, like, in the air, I could just feel it, like, that's going to be the next grift. But I just hope that someone that's actually really good at this makes a legitimate one, so we can all be like, yeah, that's the one to donate to. I sometimes think about doing it myself, but it's just like, you know, taking money for a thing like that, it's like a big responsibility. But the part that's important is whoever's doing it needs to really understand the law. Otherwise, they're just on there talking and BSing, and they don't even know what they're supposed to be trying to change, right? Like, if whoever's watching this is going to do this, like, there's really, like, a couple important points. But the part that screws men over very specifically is marital presumption, right? Like, if you're married, you know, like in California, the child is yours if you're married and your wife bores the child. And, you know, if you're getting divorced and the kid's 3, like, that's it. Too bad. You're going to be the kid's father. But I think all limits on challenging paternity should be taken away. And if a man really is done dirty so hard, he should be able to appeal to the courts, and the court should have the power to be able to basically illegitimize the child. So that's one thing. And then maybe lobbying for some kind of, like, conditions for no-fault divorce. Like, if you're walking away, if you're leaving the marriage, like, you're forfeiting custody off rip unless there's a good reason for you to have it, you know, if there's no true fault committed. So, you know, like, there could be things like that. And then also, like, adjusting child support calculators. But, you know, I could just see how I can go out of turn and become a straight up grift. But now, if you read your Plato, see, now what's important about this book is that when he talks about the philosopher kings and the people who are actually fit to rule society, when you're in the just society, all of the people who would actually make a good leader don't want to lead. And that's literally what makes them the best for it. You know what I mean? But the only thing that compels a philosopher king to actually lead his people is the fact that if he doesn't do it, someone who's worse at the job is going to do it. So he's just like, okay, I will do it. Because he would really just want to spend his time learning, pursuing wisdom, because he's a philosopher. And that's what he likes to do, is just learn about these things and understand all of these things more. But leading is kind of just an inconvenience for him, but he kind of owes it to society. So that's why he does it. And this recalls in my mind when I think of this lobbying thing, because it's like, it's almost like, damn it, somebody should do this, even though, like, you might not want to, because the other person who decides to do it might not really be fit for the job. Appreciate that, iTrevor said I'd donate. We need James Sexton to moderate the lobby group. Yeah, we need somebody like that. I watched his interview with Matt Walsh, man. Oh yeah, I streamed it, and I was a little disappointed with some things when it comes to him. He's a private practice attorney, and I don't doubt his knowledge of family law, though I don't know. You know, I would hope for a team of legal guys on that.
Procreation and society will fall apart. What happened in every single version of the Mouse Utopia experiment was that the colony totally failed, collapsing down to 0. Gangs of evil mice killed those who continued to procreate. This is the equivalent of the antenatal governments pushing various degrowth policies which crash the birth rate so much so that society goes extinct. That being said, this young male revolt would be absolutely horrifying to witness.
Yeah, I mean, the question is like, what do you do? You know what I mean? What do you do? What's the answer? And a lot of people propose the answer is to go back to some, traditional society, but we're in this mess because the traditional ways didn't work. New technology came. The world is different now. If we flip the switch tomorrow and we were back in a traditional world, it would immediately fall apart again. And we do need something new. So that's the situation that we're in. It's like all of this ruckus is not going to make women want to sleep with these guys, unfortunately. But to me, this is a result of kind of like unfettered capitalism. And again, like, I think capitalism's good on a lot of things, but what I think is bad is like if some Chinese national can come in here in my neighborhood and buy 3 houses and then rent them out to the actual native citizens that live here. Like, that's where capitalism tends to like maybe brush up with something that I don't really support, because now that's making it harder for native citizens to actually be able to buy these houses, because now some rich guy from China is helping to push up the normal market rate for houses here. And that's the kind of stuff that annoys me. I tend to think public goods maybe should have more regulation in it, but this is pretty much globalization at its finest, and that's why we're dealing with stuff like this. I mean, you sent manufacturing away, and a lot of our tech jobs and things just going to India, or we've imported workers from India to here that will just do the job for cheaper, and they come on their visas and stay for a bit and then leave, and then they get the next guy in. And I remember that because my dad used to tell me that. My dad, he was a cab driver for a long time here, and he would pick people up from the airport. And we got Intel. The headquarters for Intel is not too far away from me. And, my dad would pick up a lot of people, but he would pick up those Indian guys. He would talk to them. He would pick up lobbyists from downtown or government people from downtown. And he told me about some of the conversations. But years ago, back in like the early 2000s, I remember guys coming in, or him telling me that he remembers that, and they do the job for like 40,000-50,000 a year. These foreign nationals coming in, and I don't know. We're just seeing the effects of all these stupid decisions of not putting our own citizens first. But this is the effect of globalization. This is the effect of chasing every dollar, where profits are the name of the game. It's like you sell out your own people in order to do that, and that's how we got this huge wealth divide now. Wasn't that RFK's Jr. stance on becoming president? He only did it because everyone else was worse. Yeah, I didn't know that was his, but yeah, that's basically it. Like, I'm compelled to do this because I have no other choice.
People return whatever.
Like, if I don't do it, a tyrant's going to do this.
They've been given in most times. Society has treated young men as subhuman for years, and so I expect the rebels to do the same to their enemies. We actually live in a profoundly non-moral...
Society has treated men as subhumans damn near since the beginning of time, unless you're like the elite of the, you're high up there, so to speak.
Moralistic culture, and that we don't hold anyone to hard moral standards. What this means is that once the blood starts flowing, no one believes in moral standards enough to check their bloodlust. This war will be far less humane than the previous American Civil War or Revolution. I've been betting my money for years that America will have a rape crisis at some point.
Military advantages the right has over the left. Central coherent geography. I guess he's looking at the Republican L. Like when you look at the United States and you see what states mostly vote Republican. Most of the military and police. Control of oil, electricity, or food production. Honestly, regardless of military police, if there was a civil war, what would happen is the state you're in would just conscript you. Unless you leave the state to go to a different state. So if a lot of those police officers like leave California or whatever, otherwise you're fighting on behalf of California, which would probably be on the blue side of that civil war. Control of manufacturing, a martial and masculine culture, most gun owners, most young men. Okay.
In the future. I've said in previous videos that for a bunch of reasons, which I explain in this text wall, that the right would win a civil war. That being said, you've suddenly armed a group of sexually frustrated, resentful young men. They'll probably view women as a leftist enemy, and thus feel no remorse for being brutal. There is no unifying
Man, this guy's pretty dark about it, huh?
ideology on the right, which means it will be exceptionally difficult to maintain a strong ruling government, which will probably devolve into various warlords using effectively sex as a chip to keep their young men following them. For women in my audience, please be very, very careful in the future. To be clear, I'm not saying this is a threat, but out of genuine concern for what I think will be something truly horrible. And the great irony is that for me, just expressing this concern, I will undoubtedly be called a evil misogynist, which is just ironic. There are two changes women have pushed which have really shocked me since they remove leverage.
I think typically, like, when a revolution occurs is, like, if you're kind of taking away a lot of the opportunity, like now, and, like, I don't think he's wrong. I do think a civil war, that would be the only thing that can mess up the U.S., really is a civil war. And he gives advantages to the right, but I think what would be a deciding factor in the Civil War, because if you, let's say it really got to a point where you got two sides with the clearly drawn battle line between the two, what would happen probably to give one side the advantage over the other is a foreign intervention. And there would be a lot of countries who are probably pissed at the U.S. for past stuff that happened to them that would take advantage of funding one side to the other and shipping arms from one side to the other. So if there was a civil war and you have a bunch of different countries with like Russia funding one side and the UK and France and Germany funding the other side, that can create some issues. And whoever has basically better funding and better access to weapons is probably going to be the one who prevails. And especially if you get foreign mercenary soldiers and that kind of thing. It seems almost impossible to happen, but, you know, it could happen. And as people aren't really owning anything anymore, and it's like you can barely get a house and this and that, and there are a lot of disgruntled young men, it could happen. I mean, it could happen. He does describe it very dark, like, man, like mass, you know, grape going on, like, oh man.
Against men. One is to fund the police. Women have been able to use the state to protect them in the same way that men have for most of human history.
Listen, I'll tell you this, like, when it comes to women being what women, it's not just about the state protecting women, but the woman's true skill is about, this is actually ironically in the Barbie movie. There is a part in the Barbie movie where all the guys are getting together and they're going to change the constitution of Barbie world. And then the Barbies get together and they're like, this is what we got to do. We have to appeal to their egos and we have to use them against each other. And women really naturally know how to do this. So if there was going to be like this mass grape crisis, I think women would like instinctually submit to the right men or whatever to stave off the mass grapers. Like, if we're going to be really honest, like, they just know how to play one guy against each other. One of my buddies, well, it's his now wife, but before they got married, I can't remember. She was just telling me this funny story. And she was just, it was just something from grade school. I don't even remember, but she was telling me some friend she had. And she was just saying that, like, when women want to fight a guy or something, what they do is they have another guy fight him for her. Like, she was giving me like some real, you know, behind the curtain knowledge right there, but that's really what it is.
By removing the state's protective ability, women put themselves in a precarious position where they need men to protect them, but they have since alienated their relationship with men who could protect them, or our society doesn't train men to be able to protect them in general. This creates incredibly bad incentives for predatory young men. The second is birth control. I'm surprised so few other people have realized this, but birth control gives young men tremendous leverage over women. For human history, a man would get a woman pregnant and then have to deal with her and the child.
Yeah, I was called the shotgun wedding. You know, they did shotgun weddings even in San Francisco all the way up to, I think even up to like the early 1900s. There's a paper, an article or something I saw from the Brookings Institution, and it's crazy how recent in history shotgun weddings were the thing. It's just like, if you got somebody pregnant, like, sorry, you're getting married to that person. And, you know, even if you didn't get married to him, it just wouldn't matter. I mean, the word would pass around quick, who the dad is, who they think the dad was, and you would just kind of get, shunned from society at that point.
With birth control, powerful men can just use women for sex and then not have any consequences, which would then give the women leverage. I find porn very worrying here, where it pushes unrealistic and disgusting expectations upon men who often don't have much sexual experience. I've said before, I think the propagation of porn will have an enormous effect on history. Almost all men at this point have seen thousands of women naked, which has to change psychology and attitudes towards sex in a profound way. If you give young men power and porn is the source of their expectations, that's not good. At the same time, showing men the most beautiful women in the world naked while they don't have actually many sexual opportunities is a horrible combination because it builds up envy and resentment without a release. The de facto removal of monogamy would probably result in terrible dynamics where the new rightist nobility keeps harems while they dole out sex to their followers in exchange for loyalty.
It's kind of de facto that, because there's no actual legal punishment for cheating. No actual legal enforcing of monogamy. So for the most part, the guys who want harems are sort of there already. Nobody's going to do anything about that.
This is not a pleasant reality, and I'm not sure it's the most likely, but it's certainly a possibility. I think the reason women like The Handmaid's Tale so much is partly since it's a very good book. In fact, I would say it's one of the best science fiction books ever written, but also women intuitively realize how precarious their liberties are, in that for most of history, men have treated women as property. A lot of people on the right have said that men haven't oppressed women over history. And I do think gender roles are driven off biology, but I can't
There we
write
go.
off
I was talking about that earlier.
female genital mutilation, foot binding, or PERDA. An important point here is that with the crashing birth rate, we will have to return to more historical, normal gender standards. In the incredibly rapid population growth of the 20th century,
I think the only thing that puts us to traditional gender standards is if there's a collapse and there's a lack of that technology. But I think there'd have to be a huge collapse of the entire industrial systems that make birth control cheap and easy to get. You know what I mean? And if that happens and it's really such a bad situation where it's like that, then yeah, out of necessity, traditional gender norms would present themselves again. But then you can't say that men are oppressing women. That's literally just how those traditional gender norms work. It's just based off of the pressures put on society. So that's the natural order of things. Drake has a small harem. You can call it minor. Man, that's pretty funny right there. Yeah. Sorry, I got to showcase that one. You can call it minor. I wonder if I hope those allegations about what they're saying about him isn't true. That's terrible. You know what? Even if you get what you want, it's just never enough. It's like, oh, okay, you want this. Now you get that. And then they're just super rich, and then they just got to keep going more and more to just do something illegal. And
population growth was put at a low level of importance since it was occurring so...
look at this. This is insane. Look at the population just growth factor. Here's the year 2000. This is industrial revolution. Woo! Onwards. That's crazy.
Rapidly anyway. However, as the world's population will start to plummet over the course of the 21st century, our culture will rapidly have to put a very heavy emphasis on family values.
I don't know if he's right about that. The X factor here is technology. The population could collapse, but it's with things like AI and automated things, most of that collapsed population might not even be needed for the most part. You got a bunch of AI controlled drones flying around patrolling. You know what I mean? Obviously there's the upkeep of that and the maintenance and the manufacturing, but I think that can even be done with less people. And I just mean in the sense of listen, if you get rid of employees who would have otherwise worked at McDonald's, because now you have those little things and you only need 2 people in the back working at McDonald's instead of 10 people, that's 8 people you don't need, otherwise. And I'm sure a lot of things will be automated and the population collapse will probably happen, but with all that new technology, it's once you get it exists. We know how to do it. then that might mitigate a lot of these problems. And it might make it so that, no, you don't need traditional family values.
Raising the birthright will become the most important thing for survival. To circle back to the beginning, humans are foolish and irrational creatures. We overreact when our emotions feel hurt, and one of the worst parts of the human condition are the oscillations between pendulums of both unpleasant realities. This is very plain to see, for example, in Latin America, where a right-wing tyranny will be followed by a left-wing tyranny. Opposite politics, but both of which are tyrannies. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth will make the world go blind past a certain point, even though you still need to punish evil. That being said, we have the power at this point to stop this overcorrection from being horrifying. Between us stand two rocks, one which is complete social extinction, and the other a society of sex slaves. It's up to us to steer between Scylla and Charybdis.
See what the comments gotta say. See what the comments say. And then we'll head over to the fat versus jacked. Right, so the fat versus jacked, that's where you get your self-improvement gurus trying to help you solve the incel problem. Let's see what we got here. Okay. All right. I don't think my wife's boyfriend will let me. Okay, it's a troll comment. The child that isn't embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. African proverb, apparently. Not everyone can be 6'4" Adonis, billionaire, MMA champion, poet, musician, ballroom dancer. Yes, exactly. And this is where the self-improvement guru's advice tends to fall apart. The West is not like a conquered nation. It is a conquered nation. You know who did it, and the fact the conqueror cannot be spoken of or called out proves they have authority over you. Oh, God. Okay, yeah, we know where that's insinuating the... I can already see it now. He's an involuntary celibate who lives in his mother's basement. Okay. This would be the worst time in U.S. to start a war. Most men would not fight for this country because there is no incentive to defend it. I believe that's true. It's like if you don't own a house, you don't have a family, you're kind of like living paycheck to paycheck. It would be tough. But I will say that, like, hey, you know, if the National Guard comes around and they're swooping up us guys to get drafted, I don't know. Am I going to avoid them? I'll probably be like, all right, man, you guys got me. It's time to go. All right. Is fat being the choice? I just got to go take a leak real quick, and then I will be right back. So we're going to go ahead and start this here real soon. I'm debating to do this first, but you see this guy right here. So in this video, this guy kind of had it in with Myron, like, well, all the fat dudes kind of had it in with Myron. And he actually made a TikTok video after this was posted, kind of explaining his thoughts on it. So I might post the TikTok, or excuse me, I might react to the TikTok video first, which is like 2 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and look at this. So I'll be right back. Oh man, that was nice. All right, dude, thank you. Yep, I appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, iTribber. All right, let's get into this. This one's like an hour and 17 minutes, so it's gonna be a long time. Shot cooking right now. I appreciate that, man. Where Where are you? I'm in Australia. Man, that's so cool. Yo, I would love to go to Australia someday just to see the wildlife. If there's something like, when it comes to like an actual vacation, one of the coolest things about going somewhere is like seeing interesting places that have like wildlife that you wouldn't otherwise see. And when I went to Miami for the first time, damn, it's been over a year now. Was that November of 2022? Or was that November of 20? Shit, I can't even remember when I went to Miami. Oh, it was November of 2022. And, man, that's like one of the coolest places to visit. Because if you drive south a couple hours, you got all the Florida Keys, which is pretty badass. But in Miami and stuff, there's like, you have like all the Everglades there, you know. And I went on like those boats and we went fishing in the Everglades. And I saw all these alligators and all these different like animals. They had like so many, just like little like iguanas, I think, running around town. There's so much wildlife there. It was crazy. The alligators were something else too. There was one that kept coming up by my boat and I was fishing. So we went out there with a guide and the guide's telling you how to fish. And every time I'd catch a fish, I'd start reeling it in and the alligator would start going to try to intercept the fish. Minnesota, 11:10 p.m., Iowa. Great to have you guys in here. Yeah, I wish I could have Klaus in. I know he's in Germany, but anyways, let's get this going. Okay, so this is, oh crap, I forgot to get the TikTok video. Let's watch the TikTok video first. I could save it for after, but I think this will give a little bit of context into actually like what to expect. Let me just download this. It's like a 2-minute video. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Okay. Being fat is...
Hey friends, you may have noticed that I was on Jubilee.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. Let's get back to is fat being a choice. All right. Okay, so basically you got a panel of like normal people, you know, just like normal Americans, and some of them are fit, some of them are gym bros, and then some of them are like overweight, you know. And then you have Myron Gaines from Fresh and Fit, you know, and he's like the manosphere guy, and they're basically having a debate about fat versus jacked, and Myron kind of went in on them, you know, pretty tough. And every single comment on the video was just like, this guy Myron's nuts. He's, you know, all this stuff. And this is just one of the guys. Let's just watch what his experience was, then we'll go ahead and watch it.
Jubilee's most recent episode of The Middle Ground, Fit Men versus Fat Men. A lot of clips are starting to come out. You might have seen it on YouTube or any of the other social medias. I just want to say and address why I won't be sharing any clips from that at all. When I was invited on the show and they said, we want you to be on Jacked versus Fat, that was the original title. I remember my first question was, I was unaware the two sides had any problems with one another. But I was excited to have a thoughtful and meaningful conversation where two sides can learn from one another and share in empathy and respect and learn and grow and disagree civilly. However, I was completely unaware that a certain individual had been invited to be a part of this episode.
That's going to be our very own Myron Gaines from the Manosphere.
And the main reason I will not be sharing any clips from this show is because I do not wish to name or further platform such a truly horrible individual. The cast was unaware of who else was in the cast until the moment we had filmed, and I know myself and several others would have refused to have taken part having known that he was there. But we tried to keep it professional, keep the conversation going, and not get too sidetracked into his hateful, misogynistic, transphobic, homophobic ideology. I think it is shameful of the producers of Jubilee to have invited this man on. And
so sounds like the producers kind of like used Myron to ambush these guys. So he probably feels like he walked right into an ambush, and it was not a good faith conversation because Myron was there to further promote the Manosphere self-improvement guru brand.
Platformed him for the world to see to spout such hate. I want to shout out to the other 7 guys on the panel. Everyone came there respectfully with open hearts, and a beautiful chance was ruined by a platform rage baiting their fans. No matter who
I'm not gonna lie, like I'm sorta on the fat guy's side, and it's like I get what Myron's saying, and I, you know, obviously there is like no excuse. I mean, it is on everybody for the most part, but I don't like the being mean and being a smart ass to people like that, fat or not or whatever. I don't know. I just didn't like the way that came off. But you know, we'll watch it.
You are or where you come from, you are worthy of love, you are worthy of respect, you are worthy of autonomy, you are worthy of living. And Jubilee, the fact that you platformed an individual who espoused eugenics on your fucking program and invoked the use of concentration.
He did. I mean, but it was kind of tongue-in-cheek humor. But we're gonna see it.
Is an absolute shame.
All right, so yeah, that's that video. So let's go and just start watching this now. Hold it up. All right, being in a
life.
Oh shit! Oh, hold on a second, man. Man, see, this sucks right here. Let me show y'all something. See, I'm getting this. I'm getting this warning, and it says basically that heads up, we've detected video in your stream belonging to someone else. Your stream may be temporarily blocked. If you continue, please ensure that... Oh, damn it. Now I got to see what the hell this says. See, what it'll do is it'll kill the stream if I keep watching this. Yeah, man, that sucks. I'm just going to not watch it because I know what's going to happen is it's going to kill the freaking stream, which sucks ass. But, you know, we can just, like, look at some of the comments and stuff. Damn, I wish I really could have went over with you on that. Like, we could try to watch it, and maybe, like, what'll happen possibly is if I stop it enough, then it can't register it. But I really think I'm just past that point. So they couldn't get Andrew Tate, so they went to Planet Fitness and found the guy who would give unsolicited advice to the girls doing lat races. Myron is my inner voice when I'm eating pizza and cake at midnight, but here you can't shut him up. As soon as they find a middle ground, I don't want peace, I want problems always. Eric is proof that real gym rats are the nicest people who would help others. Yeah, it's pretty damn disappointing, man. I wish I could find something else to react to. I know every time I do these like last minute trying to find something to react to things, it just never works. Yeah, it's not worth risking it, man. That happened to me once before where I ignored it and it just cut the stream. If there's anything else that you think is good to react to, I could totally do that. But looks like Jubilee ain't gonna be it. So that, look, it's giving me the damn warning again. But it's like I ain't even watching this. All right, come on now, be cool now. Yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Oh shit. I won't react to that. Well, the hell with it. You know, that's pretty much that. Maybe I'll just call it soon, but I do need to make a few more videos lately, man. I've been doing a bad job of making videos. Part of me's just been kind of like not in the mood to. Or I've just been going through this thing lately where I just haven't given a damn, but I'm trying to give a damn. But I feel like the videos aren't good if they're forced. But, you know, I do want to make that dowry video. I got to do a bunch of response videos. Like, not response, but reaction videos. The Mouse Utopia, that one wouldn't be bad. The thing that sucks is, like, I've seen it before, so I feel like it might not be the best. We just watched a video from him, you know, so I feel like something different would be nice. Furfest. Wonder what that is. Sounds like a bunch of cosplaying furries or something like that. I say 2 hours long enough for the stream. Yeah, no, I hear you on that. Man, I don't know why, dude. I always look at these little like things I get. I got all these figures, and my plan was always to open them on stream for people to like watch. Like that's like my dream. But then I've never done it. You know what I mean? Like I've wanted to open this mummy for a long time. Like it's from the actual movie. Oh shit. And then I also got, I love ancient Egyptian. Well, I love Egypt in general. So you guys can probably tell. I feel like I almost want to just set up a third camera and just open up this guy on stream damn near right now just to freaking do it. But another thing I'll do is I do have a list of stuff I keep, and I think there is something else I can react to on my list. Let me just look at that real quick. But yeah, I got like a whole list of stuff I'm supposed to make. I'm supposed to make that dowry video, but I worked long ass hours last week and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. approaching marriage from an economic perspective. Christian nationalist on separation of church and state. Lauren Southern. Let's see. Andrew Tate changing course. Tucker Carlson on evolution. I don't know what the hell that is, but let's bring it up and let's watch it. It was him on the Joe Rogan. I don't know if you guys saw Tucker Carlson on Joe Rogan. Tucker Carlson is like like sometimes he says stuff that I find really interesting. Other times he says things that I feel like is kind of like, screw it. Definitely got a lot of good content through the stream. Thank you, man. Gonna take a look at that video. Yeah, the Mouse Utopia. Also, that shirt is hard. Yeah, dude, thank you, bro. You know how much I got this shirt for, by the way? I got this shirt for $9.99 on eBay years ago. And one day I had this like thought. And I was like, man, you know what would look sick on a t-shirt? Like some ancient hieroglyphics from whatever civilization. And I could not find anywhere that had that. I got this shirt probably like damn near like 8 years ago now, maybe. And so I went and I couldn't find anything until I found this for like $10 coming from China. It actually cost me like 20 or something because the shipping cost more than the shirt. But I have never gotten more compliments on a shirt than I do this. And this is just like a cheap gym jersey with hieroglyphs on it. I wear this to the gym. I wear it to the grocery store. I've worn it to parties. I'll wear it to the club. Like I wear this on dates. I mean, you can wear this shirt to anywhere and it just somehow works. I wear this to go to sleep sometimes. Like this is like my most used and complimented shirt. Let me just pull up that Tucker Carlson. I'm sorry. I don't know what it is with me. I'm just in the mood to just stream right now. I know it's like 9:30. So, but yeah, no pressure, guys. No pressure. I know you guys been here for a long time already. I just, for some reason, can't say goodbye. Deloney on young people getting married. Oh my God, Dr. John Deloney. Tucker Carlson on evolution. All right, let's see what the hell he was saying. I must have seen this. Okay, let's see. See what the heck Tucker Carlson's got to say. I think the one good thing that he did too was his interview with Putin. That was pretty cool. All right, come on,
if
Tucker.
Evolution is real, and if there is this constant, I don't know, but it's visible. Like you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that in fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The theory of evolution as articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true. Right?
In what sense?
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea that, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not.
As crazy as it is, and a lot of people were pissed at him for saying it, but I don't think our theory of evolution is like 100% correct. Remember, this goes back to we live in a world of very clever arguments. But I don't really believe there was like a first organism. And the reason I think that is because we live on a sphere, right? So let's say to make an organism, the first organism, it takes a certain amount of sunlight. It takes a certain amount of, soil. It takes a certain amount of whatever factors that come together to make that first primordial being. But if you live on a sphere and the sphere turns around, like let's just say on the equator, right? Like I don't believe there could be a first tree because as that thing is spinning, there's been an equal exposure on the landmass of sunlight, water, and soil, and air all around that thing going along the equator. So as it's spinning, you might get a tree on one side of the planet and then you'll get a similar tree on the other side because it's a circle. So it's like, how could it just start in one place and then go everywhere on the planet? Like to me, it wouldn't make sense because every part of that sphere on that equatorial plane is getting the same amount of sunlight exposure or whatever, right? So to me, it's like there would have to be a bunch of first trees and a bunch of first single cell organisms because it just kind of manifests from whatever ingredients are put into that environment in the first place. But I don't know if Tucker Carlson means it that way.
And
There's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
there's
and they
tons
develop...
of record of
Right.
adaptation, and you
Oh yeah, I'm also gonna read to you guys my dowry tweet. Maybe we'll finish it on that. So I'll do that
see
after.
it in your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the
Sure.
litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all that zero, that people evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all. And that's why you don't actually hear people. You hear them make reference to.
That is a little questionable. I mean, again, it's a theory of evolution. So it's not saying this is exactly what it is. This is what we think it is. It seems right now he's kind of arguing, well, if we can't find the evidence for it, then it must be wrong. I get why you would need to find a bunch of causal organisms to prove that. However, the absence of it doesn't mean exactly that it's not true.
Evolution, because the theory of adaptation is obviously true.
Off topic, where does your family originate? My family came from Poland. So my ethnicity is Pakistani, and both my parents were born in villages in Pakistan. And I was born in France. So my mom's family, my grandpa, came to California in like the 60s. Or was it the 60s? Like 70s or right around there. Because when my mom was 6, she came here with her family. But I think my grandpa came first. He was a police officer. But then came here and, worked whatever job they had. And then my father grew up in Pakistan, but when he was 18, he moved to France. Ironically, my grandpa on his side was also a police officer. And so my parents met, and I was born in France and lived there for 4 years. Yo, funny fact, bro. Back in the early 90s, teachers would hit kids. And I remember my teacher hitting me as a kindergartner in France. Or a preschooler, whatever you call it, bro. I remember getting smacked in the face by like my French teacher. But that's just what it was back then. Yeah, so then I moved here around like 4.5-ish. And so I'm ethnically Pakistani. That's where my family comes from. And I've been there. I didn't actually go to Pakistan for the first time until I was a lot older, but I have gone there before. That's cool so your family's from Poland, but you live in Australia now. That's a big change right there. But hey, again, I'm from Pakistan and now I'm here.
But Darwin's theory's totally that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later. No, we have not found that at all. And I can't even guess. I mean, I have my own theories on it, but they're not proven.
What are your theories?
God created people, distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right, but
How is that his own theory? He's like, I got my own theories on it. What's your theory? God created everybody. Like, oh, you came up with that? I think that's everybody's belief for a while now. Why did parents move from France to America? You know what? My mom had a large extended family here, but I think ultimately, so my mom grew up here and she wanted to be closer to her family because my dad's family is kind of spread out like in Europe or in Pakistan, so there wasn't like a lot of that around. So my mom wanted to come back here, but we also, I don't know, like my dad was doing well in Pakistan, so he didn't need to come here, but it's kind of tough, man. You know what's crazy? I remember being a kid, and I remember my dad asked my brothers and I, he had just got out of the shower, and he was sitting kind of like by the couch. We're watching TV, and we were little kids in France. And I remember my dad asking us, and I was like 4, if we wanted to come and move to America. And I remember for some reason we all said yes, and we moved to America after that. But yeah, it's tough for me to really say the reason. Like, I guess when I asked my parents, it's not super clear, but for the most part, those are the answers I got. I mean, it really could have been for a lot of things, probably just to come here and live in America and work. But yeah, I don't know. My dad's brother's family is in France, but I don't really keep in communication with them. But his brother was there too, and they stayed in France. But we came to live in the United States. But it was mostly because my mom grew up here, and I think that's pretty much primarily the reason. Okay, that's the end of the clip. Hey, come on, Tucker. That's not your freaking theory. You know how I feel about religion, man? I think religion is very much necessary. And the reason I'll say that is because, I'm sure at night you dream. You know what I mean? Like, if you actually made a conscious effort to remember your dreams in the morning, you would. And I've been writing down my dreams for over 10 years now. Okay. And I feel like religion is to a group of people what dreams are to an individual. So your dreams are your own personal mythology, and they're fundamentally irrational. But they're really like these very concentrated data packets that the universe gives to you in order to understand what's going on in your life and to help you make tough decisions and to help unravel emotional knots in your life. And I believe that some people are kind of like antennas that rest on the shoulders of the rest of us. And those people actually dream for the entire society. And they're prophets, basically. The prophets dream. The prophets create dreams for the entire society, and that is religion, And if you look at religious stories, they have that same kind of irrationality as like your dreams do, right? It's like, and then God took Adam's rib and made Eve. Or there was, then the appeared as a serpent and offered the apple and all these things, or two of every animal, and then this happened, and then all these things, and then this person was raised from the dead, and then they were alive again. And there's a lot of irrational things there that people believe literally, but to me they have an interpretive value, just like a dream does. So religion is like a very necessary thing, and I think religion is very authentic and real because it's coming from the center of existence, basically. Economic opportunity and better education is why my parents moved to Australia. I imagine it must be similar for America. Yeah, I'm sure that was most of it. And I would say the economy was better here than it was, I don't know if France would have been comparable. There are trade-offs. There's sometimes I wonder what would have happened. There was kind of a huge chance I would have probably lived in Pakistan, because basically at the time my dad had built a nice house in Pakistan, and his mind was we were going to go live there or go back and forth or something. But when we decided to move to America, he sold that house and we took everything and came here. Whether or not that was worth it or not, I guess I'll never know. But, it's all right. It's all right. Anyways, yeah, so a lot of these people weren't liking it. But anyway, screw that. Yeah, I wanted to read to you this. And this is the freaking dowry video I'm supposed to be making for you guys, but this is my argument for why women should be expected to pay 50-50. So let me give this to you guys, and then I think I'll call the stream. For most of Western history, women did not come to the table empty-handed. Essentially, a dowry is the woman's inheritance share that she receives on the date of her marriage, as opposed to the son getting his inheritance when the parents pass. The dowry was also used to help set up the household of the newlywed couple. So this is important to note. Basically, you'll hear women say, or feminists say, that women were always cheated out of their inheritance and they didn't get their inheritance. But that's not actually true. The way it works is the woman got her inheritance first in the form of a dowry for her wedding. Okay, so you as a father are expected to have a dowry put aside for your daughter's wedding. And, depending on how big the dowry is, that's going to determine what level of husband she's able to get. And, if it's a sweeter deal, a guy might take that dowry and align himself with your family, but that dowry money is going to be used to set up the new household, especially for a young man and a young woman. Now, on the back end, a guy gets this during marriage, but then, the next 30 years, he's saving money because if he has daughters, guess who has, you have to pay that forward to whoever marries your daughter. If you look further back, who pays who at the time of marriage, the bride or the groom, is dependent upon the economic output of both parties. The ancient Hebrews, Mesopotamians, and Egyptians all paid bride price when women's contribution to agriculture was greater, when lighter tools were used like the hoe. So back in those days, like when farming, was new, presumably new, but it was less sophisticated, bride price was typically paid to the woman's family, not to the woman, to the woman's family, because she's creating a certain amount of economic output for her family, which results in income from the harvest, right? When they sell their crops or whatever. And you're taking her from that house, so her father's losing that income, and it's coming over to you because she's going to work alongside you in the fields or whatever, and that's going to produce income for you. So you'd pay a bride price to her family. Okay. However, once technology advanced and agriculture became more sophisticated, leading to the creation of bigger cities, all three of these civilizations switched from bride price to dowry. The plow required more strength to use, so a man had to use that. Check out the attached table below, and you can see what the average payment of dowry looked like through time. Imagine getting married and the woman's family gives you $300,000 to start up the new household, and in some cases even more. So let's scroll down to that. Here's the table, okay? I don't think I can zoom in on this. Nah, okay. So you can see here's Athens, and I wanted to focus on Europe, but it's like here's ancient Athens, 6th century BC. So typically a dowry would be 10% of the bride's father's wealth, which is like, that's a lot of money for a dowry. The Mediterranean Jews, this is 969 to 1250 AD, 150 through 1500 dinars. And to give you an idea, 800 dinars could maintain a family for 30 years. So my God, I mean, even if you got 150 dinars, like that's still like a good 5-6 years of all the expenses paid. Tuscany, now we're getting into like Renaissance Italy. 125 and a half florins, 20% of the bride's household wealth. That is a lot of freaking money, all right? So that's what a dowry looked like. Urban Tuscany florins. And of course that stratifies throughout society, but this is the average payment. So we're looking at the average, okay? And then it goes down. There's colonial Latin America. The reason I'm pointing this out is because I'm basically saying dowry is not inconsistent with biblical teachings, right? The Catholic Church didn't come in here and was like, hey, you're not supposed to be doing dowries or any kind of economic transaction through marriage, right? This obviously goes down all the way. Now, right around here, you get you start seeing things industrialized. You get romantic chivalry. The printing press is invented in, I think, 1440. Romance novels start to become a thing. You get Shakespeare, and that kind of takes us out of dowry, okay? And then you only end up seeing it in like India and Pakistan and these places, right? All right, maybe amongst the super rich for a while in these other places. So that is the table, just to give you an idea. All right. Also, dowry is associated with monogamous societies, typically, especially lifelong monogamy. So where there is, a sophisticated, complex, stratified society that has complex agriculture and men are making most of the money, dowry is, and it's a monogamous society, dowry is a thing. This is contrasted with Islam, which can allow more than one wife. And in that case, it's not a bride price that's paid, but technically what happens is you give the woman a dower, meaning here's X amount of money that we've decided. And if the marriage ends because divorce is allowed in Islam, then she keeps the money to use until her next marriage, or if you pass away, that's going to help maintain her for a little bit. And that's whatever you guys agree upon. However, on the back end, she gets a share of her inheritance from her parents. So as a woman, she was now able to codify it in the religion is inheritance. So dowry goes away, but inheritance becomes a thing. I just want you to see the relationship between inheritance and dowry. Okay. Since ancient Greece and then Rome, onwards down, even through English history, King Henry VIII received 100,000 crowns from Catherine of Aragon. Now, what happened? He was married to her for about 24 years. And before that, she was actually married to his brother Arthur, who passed away. And the dowry for that was about 200,000 crowns. I think she had paid out her family had paid out 100,000 by the time he died. And there was still 100,000 unpaid from that dowry. In large dowries, there would typically be payments, right? So there might be a down payment for the dowry. And then, every month you'd receive an installment payment from her family to fully pay off the dowry. And that's also why consummating the marriage, like right at the marriage ceremony, became a thing for some people. Because the dowry could not be paid until the marriage was consummated. In some places. I don't think everywhere. All right. Okay. As the economy developed and society became more complex and stratified, dowries were the norm. It's safe to say that marriage payments are entirely dependent on whose status and economic value are worth more at the time of marriage. And payment is usually made as compensation for the difference. So the way that would work today is like if you're a quote unquote high value man, like you're a orthopedic surgeon or you're a CEO of some company, and you make some buco bucks, you're bringing in the cheddar, so to speak, the bread, whatever else, the Gouda, if you listen to E40. If you're going to get married and some families like marry my daughter, the way this should work today is you're just like, okay, family of woman, I'm a high status guy. Like, what are you going to, how are you going to incentivize me to marry your daughter who works at Starbucks? And this huge risk that I got to take. And really her family's supposed to be like, let me offer this to you to make this fair. That would be the compensation for the gap, right? Okay. Nowadays, with equal opportunity employment and 50-50 inheritance between men and women, it should not be unreasonable to expect half of the household expenses be paid by the woman. And if she wants to be a stay-at-home wife, then she should be expected to bring a dowry. This concept of men not being masculine if they don't pay for every dime of the marriage and beyond has no historical basis. That really is a lie, rooted in romantic chivalry and taken further by feminism. And see, this is what guys like Andrew Tate and like Myron and the self-improvement, guru people of the red pill space don't understand, that they're under this illusion. Like, they're just like, men are supposed to be the providers, just like the tradcons will say. But what they don't understand is that's not entirely true. It's like, yes, men are the providers. And you can even argue that a dowry coming from a woman is ultimately created by a man. But the timeline for this provisioning is different. It's like you don't go into a marriage having to pay everything and having to have a house. And you're not masculine if your entire masculinity isn't supposed to be dependent on you financing every penny of this woman's life. Some of it's supposed to come from her family. And that's why I wanted to look at European history, because it's grounded in something Western. When women claim a man should be providing everything because it's traditional, quote unquote, especially in Western society, just know that they have no idea what a traditional marriage looks like in the West. If she wants you to marry her, ask her how much of the venture she plans to finance. If she says nothing, just know you are talking to a beggar who doesn't want to do her part to make the marriage successful. Would you marry a beggar? This is why I like the soft guy era drizzle trend, because even though it's mostly humor, deep down, they understand they are being shortchanged in relationships and marriage. So let's read some of this. As already emphasized, dowry-paying societies are stratified, monogamous, and endogamous. Men and women of equal status marry. In traditional societies, where men have economic value but women do not, dowry as a bequest is consistent with this marriage pattern. Wealthier parents tend to give higher dowries, which in turn render their daughters more attractive to grooms. See, it's like right now in the society we live, it's like someone becomes a high-value man, and then they just like get married to some woman who can't offer that much, and then they end up in divorce court losing half of everything, and they're like, why did I do this to myself? If you asked for a dowry and got one, and you get screwed over in divorce, at least it's like ameliorated a little bit, you know, like, because the value's there a little bit. Grooms who have higher incomes, that's going to be your high value man, are in turn more attractive to brides. As a result, grooms with high incomes match with the daughters from families where the optimal size of bequest is large, implying positive assortative matching in the marriage market. See, that's another thing. Like, Red Pill tends to focus on just sexual market value, but there is also a marriage market value, and sexual market value is supposed to be tempered by marriage market value, and these two things should interplay, you know. Early stages of modernization increase the income inequality amongst men across generations, and now this is where we're at. I mean, we've gone through modernization, and you got people that are like make no income all the way up to like a CEO making millions of dollars. Increased heterogeneity, meaning a difference in income in the pool of grooms, necessarily. Oh crap! I didn't improve that part, or not improve, but attach it. Let's see what this footnote says. A working paper by Nunn, 2005, provides an explanation for the coexistence of dowries and bride prices using an evolutionary model. In his model, dowry, which yields a return each period, serves as a commitment device. Dowry serves as a commitment device for men who would otherwise prefer to match with different women each period rather than being married. Okay? See, so we've been out here giving commitment away for free, and this is where the soft guys really get it right when they're like, no, like, you're working. You're getting half of inheritance now. You got equal opportunity employment. Why are you not bringing something to this? Bride price paying societies have also been associated with a strong female role in agriculture. Boserup, in particular, has argued that bride price is found in societies in which agriculture relies on light tools, such as the hoe, and thus where women are actively engaged. See, that means they're creating an income for the household, an income. In contrast, she argues dowry is more common in heavy plow agriculture, where the role for women is limited. This connection seems supported by the occurrence of bride price in sub-Saharan Africa and China, where women's participation in agriculture is relatively high. The reemergence of dowry in medieval Europe also corresponded to a period of economic expansion coinciding with the introduction of heavier plow agriculture technology. In turn, this technology led to greater productivity, more surplus for trade, growth in commerce, and a rise of towns, all of which have been argued to increase the amount of household-bound activity for women. The use of bride price has tended to correlate with polygyny, not to be confused with polygamy or polyandry. Polygyny means one man, multiple women, versus polyandry, which is one woman, multiple men. And then you got the umbrella term of polygamy, which encompasses both. Men have more than one wife, and also with the possibility of divorce. So that's a direct reference to Islam. In contrast, monogamy is the norm, and divorce is rare in dowry-paying societies, right? So that's lifelong monogamy. That's going to be your Western Christian society. For example, bride price is near universal in sub-Saharan Africa, where more than 95% of societies are traditionally polygynous, okay? So in sub-Saharan Africa, they have more than one wife. Polygyny was also permitted in ancient Israel, Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, classical China, and Islamic countries. So yeah, ancient Israel, they used to have, like, I think if you look in the Old Testament, you'll see like some of the kings with multiple wives. And I think in the New Testament, I think when it says like, the man and women are one flesh, I think that's what the church uses to say, lifelong monogamy is how it's supposed to be. Polygyny was also permitted in ancient Israel, Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, classical China, and Islamic countries, all of which commonly had the burden of marriage payments falling to the groom's side. That's because in a polygynous society, there's more competition over women, which means that men have to essentially, pay from their side. In contrast, lineage and locality of post-marital residence seem to play little role in determining the direction of payments. Both dowry and bride price paying societies tend to be patrilineal. Children belong to the lineage of their father, and patrilocal. Brides join the household of grooms, where families and their families upon marriage. So, yeah, that's essentially dowry. Now, I'm not saying let's bring dowries back. I'm saying this because I'm just trying to give an understanding of why expecting women to do part of the provisioning in 2024 is not like a crazy ask. And you as a man shouldn't feel less than if you don't have the money to start the whole household and finance this entire woman's life and pay for everything. Because men, for thousands of years, haven't had to do that. They received a dowry, and that's helped set up the household. Now, yeah, I mean, of course, men were still working and bringing in most of the money. But for that beginning, very crucial, important part of starting the household, you were receiving that a bulk lump sum to help kickstart that off. Okay. And now we're not really, receiving that. And there's just so many other things that go into this. It's like, it helps you understand like what being disowned means. Like you can elope with your lover and run off. But what that means is that the father of the woman is going to be like, you're disowned now, which means you won't get a dowry. And the son, the man, if he's eloping with her, is forfeiting his right otherwise to receive a dowry on his wedding day if he did it the right way, by getting things right with the family, getting the woman's father's blessing, asking for her hand, which would necessarily entail this dowry payment. So, I mean, we live in a society now where everything's 50-50, and you can't really have a true dowry society if inheritance is split 50-50 between men and women at the time of the parents passing either. Typically, dowries would work in terms of movable goods, right? So there's immovable goods, which is like land. That would be kept for the sons, okay? And that helped keep things in the patrilineal line of things, especially as far as land goes. Otherwise, each time someone got married, it would break up the land and it would all get mixed together again. But what women and their dowries got movable goods, which would be like, jewelry, gold, cash, things that they can take with them to the new household. So it's a really, really interesting history. I might make a dedicated video for this. I might just clip this out and post it. But yeah, so that's just what it is. I think we need to not tie masculinity or feel like your masculinity is dependent on being able to pay for every single penny. And, it's not a mark against masculinity if you're smart enough to require her to bring something to the long-term relationship. So it's like, I think in 2024, what this looks like is, you go and date. And I know the soft guys are joking around about like, oh, she should pay half the date. I don't really do that. If I ask somebody out, I pay for the date. But this is all, again, short-term, low commitment. You pay for everything. You guys are fooling around, sleeping together. And that lasts for however long it lasts, whatever. But the minute she's like, where's this going? What are you looking for? Don't you ever want to settle down and get married and have kids? And you'd be like, okay, now you're having a different conversation. Okay, you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, what does that look like for you? And she's like, oh, 2 kids in the house. And you're like, okay, the average cost of raising a child in the U.S. is about, from 0 to 17, about $230,000. So we got 2 kids, that's $460,000. Average cost of a house in my neighborhood is going to be around like $500,000. You're looking close to about almost $1 million there. And that's fine. So, that's cool. I like that idea too. A house and some kids is great. So like, what does this look like? What are you bringing to help finance this enterprise that you want to embark on with me? And if her answer is 0, then the answer is no. I mean, we can keep doing what we're doing or that's that. So I think that's only fair. Anyways, yeah, that's my explanation for the dowry. Unfortunately, we could not look at the Jubilee video today. A little sad about that. I don't know why they do that. I wish they would let me just react to it, man. But anyways, maybe you should watch it for yourself too. You guys might find it interesting. But yeah, I'll probably call the stream now. It's hitting about 10 p.m. And I appreciate whoever watched, man, whoever came in here. JP, thanks for being in here. Trevor, MP, we had Will, Darth Sidonius was in here, and all the other guys. I'll try to get my sound effects working for the next stream and then go from there. Great take on dowries. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. I'm going to try to do, I've been able to do this consistently for the last couple weeks, but I'm going to try to do a Saturday night stream at about this time, 6:30 to 7-ish. And I'll make sure to put the premiere on for you guys, because I know in order to have people in here watching, like, I know I got to have a reliable time where you guys can be like, okay, we know this guy is going to be streaming at this time. So I will try to do that 7 p.m. Pacific time, which is what I did tonight and the week prior. The only thing that could screw me up is if, like, you know, suddenly I got it in, I'm with this chick, and she's just like, okay, it's got to be this time. Braylon Barnes, good to see you, brother. I wish I could have shouted you out earlier. Thank you for watching, man. But yeah, if something like that happens, I will put an update, and I will change the premiere date to be like Sunday morning. So if all of a sudden, like, you know, I'm just about to get it in, and I'm like, oh my God, the craziest thing happened, I can't do Saturday, you guys will know. But for the most part, it's going to be Saturday night, and I'll do everything I can to make the commitment. Other than that, I'll probably put like 1 or 2 videos out. I do plan to maybe do like a Wednesday night stream, possibly. That's going to be a little harder to commit to, but that's where I'm at now. Best stream to date, to be honest, commentary was 100, man. Thank you, Trevor. Appreciate that. One of these days, we'll do a hangout stream again where we'll play that game we played last time, the soccer game. Why can't I remember the name of it? You know, the cars in the soccer game? Holy crap. I don't remember the name of the game, but we had fun playing it last time. So we'll do that again. All right, guys. Thank you, man. Let me go ahead and end the broadcast.